Good morning and welcome to the second meeting of 2026 of the Economy and Fair Work Committee. This morning we will be starting with the continuation of our scrutiny of the Scottish Government's draft climate change plan, and then we will be commencing our stage 2 deliberation on the Community Wealth Building Scotland bill. And I begin by intimating that Laurie McFarlane, who had been due to joining the panel this morning, has had to give her apologies, and Claire Greer from GMB Scotland has been held up, but should be joining us subsequently. But I am very pleased to say that we are joined by Dougie Maguire, the lead officer for the passenger sector in Scotland for Unite the Union, and also from Ryan Morrison, the Just Transition Officer from the Scottish Trade Union Congress. And I would like to begin by opening up questions by handing the floor to Lorna Slater. Lorna.
Thank you very much for coming. That's Sarah's mic. Thank you very much for coming to our committee this morning. It's lovely to see you. I am myself a member of Unite the Union, and it's always good to have the unions represented in front of us today. I've got two questions for you. The first one is about how the transition to a net zero economy changes the shape of our economy. And I've just been reading that globally, the investment in clean energy is double the current investment globally in fossil fuels. So what does this mean for economic success in Scotland as we transition forward? This climate change plan, how does it affect our competitiveness, and how does it compare with what other countries are doing? Is this how we move forward and improve our economy? Are we disadvantaging ourselves? What are the opportunities here, and how do we make sure that we seize them?
Ryan, yeah.
Do you want me to push this button?
No, you don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, I think the changes to the economy are going to be pretty wide-ranging. I think there's some interesting specifics to focus on, which I think the climate change plan and a lot of the focus on just transition does as well, particularly around the energy sector. And I will immediately focus on some of the main concerns that we probably have in there that I don't think we feel are being fully appreciated and actioned, which is around the level of investment and the return in jobs and local benefit from renewable energy sources in comparison with oil and gas and nuclear. And I think when we look at some of the figures that we've published recently in our own analysis of the ONS, low carbon renewable energy economy figures, what we can see are significantly lower job returns per £1 million of turnover in offshore and onshore wind compared to both oil and gas, but also even other renewable energy sectors and other parts of the low carbon economy. I think there has to be a focus then as a result of that on the manufacturing side. And I think we're not at the right place to be taking advantage of that as an opportunity. And I think something the climate change plan does is sort of speak to the position that Scotland is in to capitalise on opportunities that are emerging, and I think we'd probably disagree that that is the situation that we're in. I think Scotland is in a good position for developing renewable energy capacity, for building a transition to alternative energy demand and energy sources. Whether or not we're in a good position for a just transition in that respect, I think we would probably disagree with, and I think that is the experience that workers are currently feeling as well, which Dougie can probably speak to more directly.
Yeah, I'm happy to give you a worker's perspective. In addition to the responsibility for passenger transport in Scotland, they've also got an oversight of the oil and gas sector and energy. So I wouldn't be able to go into too much detail, but the feedback that we've had consistently over the last 18 months to 2 years, in particular from the oil and gas sector workers, is that the drive to green energy and harnessing wind and the gigabytes that are required to deliver that energy for the offshore are absolutely supported. It's a fantastic vision to have, but the difficulty is that, and Ryan mentioned it, and it is the fact, and it comes up in every conversation, there are no jobs at this moment in time to transition to. So there's a major impact right across Scotland, basically based on government policy and regulation, which means that in just an example of the last 12 to 18 months, there's been 13,000 jobs lost in the oil and gas sector. That's seriously affected the northeast of Scotland and down to the northeast of England. The oil and gas sector workers come from right across the country. Lots of them have taken advantage of the training that's available, but very few of them have managed to transition into green jobs. Worse than that, in my opinion, is the fact that last year SSE, who were committed and are a major player in the offshore sector, wind sector, they made 450 highly skilled workers redundant because the regulation hadn't delivered the achieved objectives that they had for 2025-26. I now see yesterday that they're advertising for 600 trainee technicians. So the skilled workers have been lost. Wherever they've lived in communities have lost that income, or people have had to move abroad to find similar work. Oil and gas sector, we're finding lots of people are ending up in the Scandinavian countries, Africa or the Middle East to try and ply their trade. And that comes on the back of, obviously, the issues we've had with Moss Morn just recently, which is ongoing, and the bit of a disaster that emanated from the closure of the last oil refinery in Scotland. So while I don't think anybody with any common sense would argue that we have opportunities in Scotland and that the drive to green energy is absolutely imperative, we're no matched up, and I don't think we're anywhere near, neither does my members think, we are anywhere near to be able to deliver the amount of jobs that are required to offset the jobs that have been lost, particularly in oil and gas. We're also finding problems in manufacturing because of the contraction across the world by some of America's tariffs. We're finding employers are now looking at issues with manufacturing, trying to move to different countries, and just recently we were involved in a bit of a battle in Glenrothes with a company that's trying to implement fire and rehire because they could have the work done elsewhere cheaper. So I don't know how we arrive at where everybody wants to be, but clearly the biggest issue for workers and the big problem they've all got is that it seems to be jammed tomorrow. It's not happening quick enough to fill the gap. And until we get to that point, how do we manage to create a more equal society? That's the issue as I see it.
Thank you very much. For my second question, we heard from witnesses last week that they felt that this was more of an emissions reduction plan rather than a climate change plan because it didn't incorporate things like resilience building, adaptability. I guess, Dougie, what you would talk about, what we do in the meantime until Jam tomorrow arrives. So I'm curious as to your thoughts on the sort of credibility of this as a climate change plan and what that means for the people you represent.
Will I come in here? I would agree with that comment, actually, that is the case. And this is a pretty simple analogy for me. And if I could speak slightly about passenger transport here, it is very welcome by the public and our members who work in the bus industry that new electric buses have been arriving at speed. They seem to be working. They seem to be comfortable. They seem to be doing the job. So there will be a reduction in climate emissions. The issue for us is that these buses are built overseas. They're not built in Scotland, which doesn't help your future economy going forward. But secondly, while we are predominantly looking at, if I'm talking about passenger industry, heavy goods as well, I would suggest, while we're trying to reduce emissions, that's only one part of the issue, isn't it? Because until we come to a fairer position in society and provide communities with the transport that they need when they need it at an affordable price, there'll still be, at least for the next 5 to 6 years, higher emission vehicles travelling around the road. But the simple thing for me is, while we're concentrating on passenger transport, HGVs, ferries, airports, the absolute boom in white vans running about every street in every town and city in Scotland delivering parcels is probably creating more emissions than the rest of the industry put together. So we've completely skewed the economy. Town centres are now no the places they were, the place to go anymore, which is where the majority of bus stations are, despite the fact that the majority of people who now do go shopping go to retail parks, which didn't have the same bus services or the same facilities. And I'm certainly not having a go at people who are trying to make a living and delivering goods in a white van. But the truth of the matter is, that explosion is probably, have we ever quantified the emissions that causes? So it's probably more of a question than an answer, sorry, but...
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think in terms of whether or not it's more than an emissions reduction plan, we've done a lot of engagement on the SNAP3, the Scottish National Adaptation Programme, and last year I think that's something that we probably don't see particularly well covered in the climate change plan, but maybe that's an appropriate distinction between the SNAP and the CCP. We do have concerns there, and we have seen significant issues, particularly in recent severe weather. I'd include Storm Eowyn and also the recent snowstorms up in, particularly in Aberdeenshire, where we've had some contact from trade union members up there about that experience. But what we find is often that workers are quite poorly protected in those extreme weather events. I think employment law and workers' rights aren't very clear on the issue, and it's not a particularly clear point for workers whether or not they are able to miss work or to not travel where it is dangerous and where there are red weather warnings, or whether or not that would lead to deductions in pay, for instance. So we do have examples of workers effectively being told that they will have to travel or they will lose pay. That obviously puts them in a situation where, that includes during a red weather warning, that's a situation where they then need to decide to travel when the expert advice is that there is a risk to life, a severe risk to life, or to forgo their own pay. And in many situations, that's just not a viable choice for people to have to make. I think that's something that we are keen to work on and to try and improve, and we have been trying to build on the Fair Work for Severe Weather Charter that was agreed after the Beast from the East, but we think that could probably be updated to better reflect the expectation that severe weather will become more frequent and perhaps more severe. That's not something that's reflected in the climate change plan, and I guess it does look to me more of an emissions reduction plan than it does include wider issues like adaptation or resilience. You mentioned credibility, I suppose, towards the second half, and I think that's inevitably something that Dougie and I and Claire will come back to, which is that I don't think we're in a particularly strong position on credibility with these policies and the kind of general just transition agenda with trade union members for the reasons that Dougie has outlined. I think there's been a lot of workers who feel nervous about the conversation and who don't feel confident when they read the plan. I wouldn't feel confident if I was a worker in one of these sectors. Reading the plan, I don't think there's a level of security that you would expect for your job and for the future of your job as part of a just transition.
Thank you. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. I'd like to bring in Murdo Fraser. Murdo.
Thank you. Good morning to the panel. I'd just like to follow up on Lawrence Slater's questions and ask more about the costs in the plan and the costs to the wider economy. I wonder if you'd agree, we've seen an element of deindustrialisation in Scotland. We've seen, just in the last short time, Grangemouth closing, Mossmoran closing. Many of the things we used to produce in Scotland, we no longer produce here because of high energy costs. We're still using these things, we're just importing them from other countries. So all we've done is export our carbon emissions elsewhere. That makes us look good because it reduces our emissions, but doesn't actually deliver any net benefit to reducing CO2 emissions worldwide, and it means we lose the jobs that are here. I've just been looking at the latest price. Allocation 7 has just been published for the contracts for difference. Offshore wind, the latest price is £90 per megawatt hour. Now that doesn't include, of course, the cost of building the new transmission, doesn't include the cost of storage, backup that's required for wind. Comparing £90 per megawatt hour to gas, gas is currently priced at just under £55 per megawatt hour. Now, if we're trying to decarbonise, we need to move away from gas, but what does this mean? I mean, is there a real concern that we lose our industrial capacity because we're going for higher priced energy?
I mean, I'm happy to speak to some aspects of that. I suppose the industrialisation, which we have noted, has been quite a consistent theme over the last few decades, where particularly manufacturing jobs have been lost overseas. I think from our perspective, there's a range of reasons for that, most of which would come back to generally the way in which we view the manufacturing sector and how we've managed those industries. I think we see ownership as a fairly key component of that. I don't think we should be waiting for decisions to be made overseas by particular companies when we could have a greater stake in those sectors and have greater control over them. I think climate change is going to be a significant industrial and economic transformation. And that is a risk factor.
If I just interrupt you for a second, but regardless of who owns these companies, they're going to be facing the same challenges with energy costs, are they not?
Yes, and actually some of the sectors in particular, I think, that are included within the climate change plan, the energy-intensive industries, we have had some conversations with them, glass sites, cement works, etc. That I mean, you mentioned electricity prices. That is a massive issue that makes those industries extremely uncompetitive, not just domestically, but with European counterparts. Our electricity, particularly for industrial use, is higher. I think there's something there for those companies where the message in this plan is that they should be looking to pursue electrification, and that's something which we would support as part of the general climate change agenda. But I think it's important then, therefore, to talk about the pricing issue and whether or not that's been adequately solved, because there is a risk that it becomes uncompetitive.
Yeah, and specifically in terms of the plan, what's your view in terms of the costs that are put in this plan and how it's all to be paid for? Do you think the plan deals with that sufficiently?
I can't say that I've particularly gone through it with a fine-tooth comb. What I have seen is that the plan talks about the balance of net costs and the potential costs of climate inaction. I think that's an interesting comparison to make. What I think is interesting within the finance side is that there is commentary on the net benefits to households. There's a section of that which outlines where and which sectors that's most likely to come from, and a really significant proportion of that comes from the transition to electric vehicles. From a just transition perspective, we would have some concerns if the primary benefit of the economic side of this are from the transition to electric vehicles, because we are interested in, as Dougie has spoke about, the expansion of public transport, particularly bus, given that it is predominantly used by lower income households, and also who has access to the brand new electric vehicles that might be coming on stream. So I think there is not sufficient detail about who will benefit from the transition in the plan. I think the net costs, it appears from what is said in the plan, will be factored into the wider cost of climate inaction.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
Can I just ask a brief supplementary? You mentioned both glass making and concrete. Was it concrete or cement? To my understanding, it's not just a question of the price of electricity. It's actually the fundamental technology of electric heating, and the current state of technology just isn't sufficient to heat those processes to the point where you need to. I mean, do you think there's a sufficient effort to actually look at the fundamental technologies, especially for high heat processes, which right now we don't have practical, let alone cost-effective alternatives? Do you think that effort into that sort of R&D needs to be put into place and be part of the plan?
I mean, yes, certainly. But I do think, though, that one of the reasons for that may be that the industrial electricity price is such a significant barrier that it isn't worth considering at this point in time until you know for certain that those prices are going to change. I mean, even if you look beyond electrification to changing to other energy sources like hydrogen, for example, like under certain plans, you'd be looking at maybe green hydrogen, which comes back to the same issue of the cost of electricity, particularly for industrial use. I think there's some interesting work that could be done with power purchase agreements and more localised purchase of electricity, if that is something that major industrial energy users could consider, particularly with the growth of offshore wind electricity generation, for example. But I think that the question for our energy-intensive industries is probably not just about the energy sourcing, but also about the raw materials and the feedstocks and things. I don't actually think that conversation is happening particularly comprehensively anywhere, and that's a really significant concern to us. It's also a sector that's included within the Green Industrial Strategy. From a just transition perspective, it isn't clear for us anyway that the workers there, again, would have confidence in how that sector is being described or discussed within these plans.
That's helpful. I'd like to bring in Sarah Boyack. Sarah.
Thanks very much. It's good to have you in front of us today as a member of Unison and Community. There's a real issue about who pays for what when. You've already talked about job losses and people not having opportunities. How do we ramp up what the opportunities are potentially across every community? You've talked about energy. There's a comment in the need for regional just transition planning so that people are involved right across the country to see where these new jobs are. So just wondering what you're thinking about that manufacturing opportunity you've mentioned, new transport infrastructure. How do we, and you know, sorting people's homes out to make them energy efficient, how do we see the jobs that go with all of that so that you have jobs for the future and jobs now?
I think the whole conversation for me in the plan, and I do believe it is a climate reduction plan more than anything else. I think we're in we've been in a chicken and an egg situation for long enough, and I think that I'm saying that because Ryan's explained that if energy is too costly, people didn't manufacture. It goes abroad. You've got to have the price right to be able to do that. Communities are clearly struggling. Who pays for what when? I think it's pretty clear to the general population in Scotland that it's us that are paying for electricity prices at this moment in time through the electricity bills. I also know that the contracts for difference means that despite the fact that we're not going to get the megawatt numbers where they should be up the east coast for years, it's probably well in advance of 2030, that whether the turbines blow or not, that the electricity companies or the grid providers are making money from that, and that's going to increase. There's a summary that says that will potentially increase consumers, private consumers' bills by about 20%. So who pays for what when? I think we're all paying for it at this moment in time. We've no sorted out the manufacturing side of this, as Ryan says, for 2 decades. It seems we manufacture everything abroad, and everything to do with green energy is also being manufactured abroad at this moment in time. And if we've got any part in that from a worker's perspective, it's putting stuff together when it arrives, which doesn't give anybody much confidence that we're going to have highly paid, well-skilled jobs that are covered by collective agreements for our members. So I think the plan is a vision. I didn't think there's enough detail to see how we get there, and I genuinely do believe, and certainly Unite the Union believes, that unless we have a competent industrial strategy that delivers real jobs in a graduated manner, that has to work hand in glove with the green energy sector in making that transition. But we seem to be running towards the transition and going to leave workers and communities behind. Sorry, that's a bit convoluted, but I'm really just off the top of my head there.
I mean, I think I'd refer back to the ONS analysis that we carried out, which was not only focused on the race, I guess, to benefit from our renewable energy potential, but also looked at some of the sectors within the low-carbon renewable economy that have had fairly decent performance in terms of jobs, and those include low-carbon transport and infrastructure, it includes energy-efficient products, energy-efficient lighting, it included renewable heat last year as well, having had a fairly substantial increase. And I think there's a distinction to be made that we would be looking for when we're considering just transition within the climate change plan, that at least takes the planning for how we meet emission reduction targets to a much more granular level. So it's effectively what do we have now that needs to be protected, that needs to be transitioned? What does that look like? How intensive does that support need to look based on the expected level of change? Where there are emerging opportunities, how are we securing the job opportunities that might come from that? So for offshore wind, that looks much more like manufacturing than it does the operation and maintenance, but the secondary part to that is how do we benefit from the potential wealth generation of those emerging opportunities, and that is where we'd again come back to questions of ownership. And through ScotWind, you know, we can see that the Irish Investment Bank has stakes. We can see that there are stakes from a company comprised of 94 towns and municipalities in Belgium, for example, and also a company that is owned by the German region of Baden-Württemberg as well in ScotWind. These are companies that stand to benefit from the income that they expect to make from the ScotWind round. Scotland doesn't have a share in those projects, so neither will we see the jobs, the dominant part of which will come in the manufacturing, but also we are likely to have the economic benefits, the wealth generation of those projects bypass us as well. The plan doesn't do that level of detail or analysis when it comes to just transition planning, and I think that's what we'd want to see. I think similarly with transport, I mentioned that one of the issues mentioned is about the potential financial savings from the transition to electric vehicles, and it's very briefly touched on that the reason for that would be because of the reduction in maintenance and repairs that are expected from electric vehicles compared to combustion engines. What's not then spoken about or gone into more detail is what does that mean for people that work in car garages, what does it mean for the mechanics that make up the predominant that sector, what does it mean for the supply chain who supply the components and different parts that might be needed. There is the statement that will lead to financial savings, but then not the analysis, which is effectively where you get into just transition planning. I think it's the distinction across the board on those issues for each of these sectors that we would need to feel confident that we're going to ramp up the benefits, because right now that's not clear.
Yeah, and I suppose the next thing is just to develop from that. To what extent are workers and unions able to influence this discussion to deliver the transition to net zero? We were in here last night, CPG in Islands and renewable energy, and we were focusing on community-owned projects and community benefits. And the discussion was, if you frame it as decarbonisation, people are not interested. If you talk about jobs, lowering bills, investing in your community, you've just talked about ownership. Is there more we can do to actually get those benefits that other countries are delivering through renewable energy companies in Scotland? How are you involved? Is it municipal ownership? Is it planning changes? What are your thoughts about how you actually involve workers across the country in delivering this so that they benefit? And if you want who wants to come in on that one?
I think you'll both be better placed to talk about the kind of direct workers' experience in some of these sectors. I'll maybe touch on the ownership question first. I think there has been a fair bit of attention on the community ownership side. We are quite interested in the national and municipal ownership projects. It's something that's mentioned in the climate change plan as a case study, as the Orkney offshore wind farm, which is expected to return quite significant profits back into the local authority, which they will be able to use for other services or potentially to expand their energy ownership of other projects. That's listed as a case study. What we don't see is any policy that would enable that to be far more expanded elsewhere. I think in 2024, less than 1% of the new renewable energy capacity that was added in Scotland was either had an element of community or local ownership to it. Yep. That's a quite significant issue if we're looking to build on who is benefiting from renewable energy. The returns are very different when there is community ownership as opposed to community benefit funds, not least because the voluntary target for £5,000 per megawatt in community benefits hasn't been met. I think there are other questions emerging now around things like battery storage, where I don't think they're necessarily tied into the same voluntary practice of community benefits, and that's an added issue because of the lack of jobs that we see with those types of projects. There will be jobs on the construction side, but looking at planning applications for some of those very large battery storage sites, you're looking at maybe not even one full-time equivalent job for the operation and maintenance of it. What you probably have is one remote worker covering multiple sites across Scotland, potentially across the UK. If we're neither tying those projects into community benefits and there are no jobs, those projects sometimes have leases for up to 30 years. They've already been awarded. That's, again, a significant issue.
Yeah. Do you want to come in on that issue? About how you get involved? So that your members actually get what they need?
I think the point you made was well made, and that is that the majority of people that we speak to are absolutely concentrated on keeping the job that they've got, rather than wondering how they can benefit from something that is not in their area, not in their there's fear whatsoever, because it's a battle out there, isn't it? And I know there is some evidence that I've seen recently that there are community benefits now being talked about in Scotland, particularly in the Highland area, I think, and some good stuff in Lanarkshire as well. But when you look round, or when I've had a look round the cities in Scotland, there doesn't seem to be a lot of emphasis from city councils or local communities to try and get engaged in the same manner with community ownership of green energy. It seems to be this idea that you have to be near a wind farm to benefit from that. So that's no conversation that's taking place within the normal workplaces that the ideal way is, I suppose, is the answer.
That's really helpful. Thanks. Hand back to you,
I wondered,
Convener.
again, if I could make a brief supplementary. So there's the point around whether workers are being engaged at at the level of kind of the workplace. I think there's also the question actually whether the trade unions and the workforce at the macro level are being engaged in terms of skills planning. And indeed, Ryan, you were alluding to what happens to car mechanics. And I actually have spoken to some sites where they can go, well, we can use the skills that car mechanics have and use them in different ways and in different industries. But that requires a degree of thinking through, identifying those opportunities and proactively planning when those changes happen. Is there sufficient focus on actually how that dialogue between trade unions and government and indeed employers about how those sort of transitions can work? Do you think that has sufficiently elaborated on in the plan? Or what more would you like to see in terms of that dialogue and detailed planning between trade unions, government and employers?
I mean, I don't think it's structurally embedded in how the plan is approached and how some of these policies are developed. I think there are examples of initiatives that have been taken forward off the back of demands from trade unions that would include the offshore training passport as an example, which then through their development have slightly changed and morphed into something that workers and the trade unions involved haven't necessarily been asking for, that haven't necessarily addressed the full pathway that would be needed. So with the offshore skills passport, we know from workers' experience in the offshore sector that what they find is they can log their qualifications, they can have a look at alternative qualifications that they might get. They're still expected to pay for those training and qualifications. They're still going to be potentially duplicating the training and qualifications where there's significant overlap between offshore wind and oil and gas, as an example. But also, once they complete that process, they're then looking for work in the other sector that they can't find. And that's, again, what the problem there is are we creating a full pathway for workers that starts with recognising the skills they have in the job they're in, understands the timeline of what the expected change is for them, supports them to reskill, and then opens up opportunities for them at the other side. There are pockets of this that I think have been done better. So, for example, I think through Unite's engagement and GMB's engagement on Grangemouth, there's a job prioritisation scheme. I think we'd say that's positive. At Alexander Dennis, there was an intervention to support furlough and able to support the workforce, to support the company to try and find new orders. Those are examples of things that have come from trade unions as part of trying to support those workers to transition. They are not then reflected in the climate change plan. They're not in the green industrial strategy, and they're also not within the just transition plans that were prepared for different sectors last year. Those are the types of initiatives that we would quite like to see considered as part of that. How are they part of an active industrial strategy that supports workers, rather than as piecemeal responses to reactive issues?
Yeah, I should probably have also just reminded the committee of my register of interest that I'm a member of both Community and USDA, the trade unions. I don't know if Dougie or Claire would like to say anything about the kind of the proactive involvement of trade unions in terms of planning for skills transitions.
Well, just to add to what Ryan said, we absolutely spent years actively engaging with the oil and wind companies to try and get the skills passport developed. But unfortunately, while it's better than nothing, there's still duplication required with a skills passport. The wind companies are not going to, for instance, if you've got, and you obviously need an offshore survival certificate to working on oil rig, that same certificate will not be accepted by the wind companies. You've got to go and do a different type of survival training.
And is that still an issue? Because
yeah,
I mean,
that's still an issue.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
because I mean, this is a point that's been raised for quite a long time now.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely the case that it's a step in the right direction, a skills passport. There's no doubt about that. That's probably something that needs to be developed for the majority of skilled workers across Scotland. Mm-hmm. But it comes back to the oil and gas and the Grangemouth and the most modern problem that while they might have skills passports or training made available to them, often paid for, the jobs aren't there.
Yeah.
That's the issue, that we're training people now who, if there's a lifespan on that training certificate, which there normally is in skills training, it's going to run out by the time the jobs are available. So they're going to have to go through it again. So it might seem credible and a worthwhile thing to do to reskill and retrain workers. Of course it is. We've always argued for that. But the basic point is that whether it be Grangemouth, Moss Morton, oil and gas, or anywhere else where we're speaking to workers, they're all saying the same thing. We've done what was asked of us. We've went and got ourselves retrained, reskilled or whatever, but I can't get a job. They're not there. And if I do get a job, it's half of what I was earning previously. So it's not the same quality, high skill set. And actually, people with high skill set levels, they need to use their skills.
Yes.
We need to use their skills, or else that's a complete waste of talent.
Yes. Claire.
Yes, thank you. I totally agree with what's already been said, and I think one of the problems by getting people to engage, into things like the skills passport, is that there is, at the minute, there's so many initiatives. I mean, one of the last meetings we were at, I think they said there was about 80 initiatives to get people to retrain who are coming from the oil and gas industry into renewables. And when there's so many things on the table, it kind of dilutes the integrity of them. And, and as Dougie had said, by the time you've completed one of these, training programmes, skill passports, it's outdated because the jobs are not there for them to move into. Mm-hmm. So there's a real problem that, you spoke about communities earlier on as well. The people who live in these communities are the people who work in the oil and gas industry, they work in the nuclear industry. They don't see a way out, they don't see a pathway, they don't see where they're going to go next. Their skills are, they've been wasted. They're either moving abroad to other jobs elsewhere, or else they're going down south to, dare I say it, Hinkley Point. And, I've said it in this room before and I'll say it again, that's not through design, that's through fault. Because of the amount of delays that went on at that point, that's the only reason these jobs are there at Hinkley Point at the moment. And we need to make sure that there is a plan in place for people to go to. And if you don't have the workers on board, you won't have the communities on board. You don't get the revenue, you don't get the income. It's a complete failure right across the board. So we need to make sure that what we've got in place for them works. We need to make sure that the people who are going to take part in it understand it. And there needs to be a route out at the end of it. Whereas at the moment, it just seems to be numerous incentives, numerous kind of organisations coming in and saying, here's what we can do for you, and there's no jobs at the end of it. There's no clear path.
So I'm going to bring in, first of all, Kevin Stewart and then Willie Coffey. Kevin had a supplementary on one of the things that had just been said.
Thank you very much, Convener, and I declare an interest as a member of Unison. The climate change plan is something that has to be delivered not only by government but by others as well. And it's all about delivery and delivering for people. And Dougie mentioned there some inaction from local authorities when it comes to grasping community benefit. But there's probably inaction as well in terms of following the likes of Baden-Württemberg, in terms of investing in the future and using the likes of local government pension schemes to boost manufacturing for jobs for the future, which certainly I want to see coming from the northeast of Scotland, where an unjust transition will hit hardest. Do you think that we should be more open to the kind of investment from local authorities, and particularly from their pension schemes, than we have been thus far in order to deliver. And Dougie, since I mentioned you, you first, please.
Absolutely. I'm not going to sit anywhere and say we should be using local government workers' pension schemes to fund anything. That's completely out with my gift, I would suggest. But I take the point that you're making. I think that the point is valid. That why are we not using the best examples from across the world of how to gain a stake in the green energy vision, and how can we use the benefits of that to make sure that we're working in tandem, delivering jobs at the quality jobs at the same time as we're reducing the carbon emissions. It has to be, it has to go hand in glove, doesn't it? So, but I'm not an expert on pensions or pension schemes, and I wouldn't like to.
So I'll give you an example, Dougie. I heard not so long ago that one of the local authority schemes here in Scotland, one of the investments that had been made was on offshore wind in Vietnam. And the manufacturing base there. Surely it would be much better and likely a more guaranteed return using that monies to invest here in Scotland to create jobs rather than elsewhere around the globe.
It may be, though, and so hypothetical for me, but it may be that the investment isn't available in Scotland. We need to. I mean, it's a case of build it and they will come, isn't it?
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that the only way forward that this country should be looking at is finding ways to make the maximum impact on communities and our own economy from reducing carbon emissions at the same time as producing goods, manufacturing particularly, and looking at the new skills that are required for that. There will be an explosion of work. I've got no doubts, but it's no any time soon is the problem.
Sure.
I think what we're looking at, and I'm particularly interested in the Highland area, and we've had quite a number of proactive conversations with the CEO of the Green Freeport in the Moray area, and the vision looks good, the plan looks good, but there's not one company, as far as I'm aware, have committed to coming in and building anything in that area. Highland Council are spending money, SSE are spending money, they're building social housing, they're building workers' villages, but there's no work. So how do we get there? So when it comes to pension schemes or any other funds, I think we really need to start thinking about how we fund, and that's what's missing in the whole document, actually. In reality, there are examples of money already available, but where do we find the money and how do we use it in order to make...
Well, I've just given one alternative here for more money. Ryan, please.
Yeah, I mean, we do look at the number of renewable energy installations owned by local authorities each year when that information is published by the Energy Savings Trust, and there is quite a broad range of ownership. There are some local authorities who have maybe 20, 30, 40 installations through to South Lanarkshire and Stirling, and I think Aberdeenshire at the higher end, sitting on several thousand of them, and we've tried to kind of build our understanding of why that's happening and how it's happening. And in South Lanarkshire's case, the local authorities made the decision to try and fit solar PV on their council buildings. So they've taken an initial approach was to look at one project to try and understand the business case, the financial case. Once that kind of paid back and the repayment period was clear, I think the repayment period was about 4 or 5 years, they then decided to kind of reinvest some of those savings into scoping out all the buildings that they could potentially fit solar PV on. They've upskilled their building services team to be able to fit those and maintain them. Some of them are apprentices, a couple have been involved with the local authority for a number of decades, and now they are seeing the benefits of those savings, which can be reinvested into other services. It's not something then that we've seen particularly well reflected in Scottish Government planning, and we've tried to feed that back in, that we think there are good initiatives going on that could be supported, and there's no necessarily no reason why local authorities couldn't be on a more equal playing field in terms of the number of installations there. We actually think that the issue is just that it isn't something that all councils are aware that they could do or that they should do and that they could consider and that it might pay back. It's a risk for the council, but the experience of South Lanarkshire is that it pays back fairly quickly and they're very confident moving forward with it. I think in terms of the pension fund, I'm in a similar position to Dougie. I'm not going to try and suggest what the local authority pension should be investing in, but I think there are other sources of funding that we could be considering that are meant to be supporting a just transition. The Scottish National Investment Bank would be a fairly obvious immediate one. A number of years ago, one of the first investments the bank made was to the Iona Wind Partnership, which is effectively an asset management firm, and it helped to close the gap for them in terms of securing new projects in Scotland. It's difficult to understand why that money shouldn't be used to support local authorities to become part owners of offshore wind projects rather than going towards asset management firms overseas.
Thank you. Claire, please.
Yes. So again, I'm not going to comment on what we should do with local authorities' pension funds. What I would say, though, is, I have spent, a lot of time in Shetland over the past 12 months, and if we want to use a perfect example of watching an industry being decimated, Shetland is at the forefront of that. And the time that I have spent there, there have been directors of companies who have attended visits with us, CEOs of companies who were standing there, investment in hand, and some of them it was £80 million, the other one it was £40 million, ready to invest immediately in Sullenvoe, ready to invest in Shetland, within Scotland. At the same time, our government was celebrating a £28 million trade deal that had been made, across the waters. When we could be doing this in our own country, we've got people ready to invest, and they are not doing it because they don't have the trust in what's going on in our energy sector in Scotland, but also because they require there to be an energy mix. They're not looking for 100% renewables. They're looking to invest that money into renewables, but only if there's a mix for oil and gas in there as well, which is necessary to keep us going. But it seems to just be getting shut down entirely. So you're asking where else that money could come from. There are many, many avenues it can come from. That's just one from a visit that I've done in Shetland. You're asking about the local authorities. The leaders of Shetland Local Council were there at these meetings. They were welcoming these people onto their island. They were asking how this investment would work in the island. Their ears were opening. They were listening to what was being said. Unfortunately, once it leaves the island, those decisions are getting taken out of their hands, and that's where the problems lie. We need to listen to our communities, we need to listen to the local authorities, and we need to open our eyes to what else is out there and where else the money can come from.
And you're suggesting that there needs to be a logical balance between still investing in oil and gas and moving to the green technologies as well, in order to sustain jobs for the future and really create that just transition.
100%. When we look at the just transition, the focus on it is to make sure that we look after what we already have, and then going into the future that there's jobs that we go to. There's a place for people to go. At the moment, there's not. We're talking about closing down industries, closing down sectors, for the name of getting to net zero as quickly as possible, and we can have that badge of honour in this country. But what's it going to leave? Where are our people going to work? What's going to happen to our communities? Where are we going to go for energy security? We need the investment just now, and we need to make sure that rather than a race to net zero, we have a race to make sure that we're secure in our own energy in our own country. And to do that, we need to look after what we've got. We can't just keep saying, where can we go that's new? We need to look at what we've already done. We have, world's leading skills and trades in energy. We have world leading health and safety, in there. At the moment, we're looking at closing down all of our nuclear. Grangemouth is hanging on with, the skin of its teeth. We're looking at oil and gas, closing that down. We need to, look at the bigger picture, see what other countries are doing, and, just take a step back and ask, is this the right thing that we're doing, for the people of Scotland? And I don't personally think it is.
Thank you. Thank you, Convener.
I'd like to bring in Willie Coffey for a question before handing over to Stephen Kerr.
Thanks, Convener, and good morning, everybody. It was really a follow-up question to Sarah Boyack, and the Convener came in. It was really about what your view is of whether workers and the trade unions play a strategic partnership role in this journey that we're on or not. I'm beginning to to get the message, I think, from what your comments are. But do you see that you're being carried along in the slipstream of this and abandoned along the way, or do you feel that you're a key partner in shaping and developing public policy in this journey? And could you maybe offer any examples from Europe or elsewhere? Ryan, you mentioned a few places like Ireland, Germany, Belgium and so on, where perhaps workers play a more central role in the development of public policy in this whole journey?
I'm happy to start. I think there are, we have been invited to engage in different areas of this. I think the Just Transition plans last year in particular, we were asked to support policy development there, and the way we went about doing that was to make sure that workers from those sectors and the trade union officials representing trade union members in those sectors were kind of front and centre of those discussions. That opportunity was there for us to facilitate that, whether or not what was said and what the conclusions of those meetings were is necessarily reflected in the policy outcome is probably where we'd find some disagreement. Like, I don't think we feel strongly that what workers are saying is being reflected in either Just Transition planning, the Green Industrial Strategy, or within the Climate Change Plan. I don't think that's insurmountable. Like, we could do better in a lot of these spaces, and there are other areas, I think, where maybe it's not necessarily in the development of those specific policies where the key decisions are being made. We've had a focus recently on the Scottish Offshore Wind Energy Council, which, as far as we can see, is making some fairly significant decisions about how that sector should be developed and what the economic benefits will look like. There is no trade union involvement within the Offshore Wind Energy Council, and we've asked for there to be better representation on there. There are working groups covering things like skills and other issues. I think it's quite important that we do have that tripartite view of those discussions. Similar with the onshore wind sector deal, there wasn't necessarily trade unions involved as a partner to that, as a delivery partner to that. It was industry and government, and I think that that is reflected in the policies that are chosen, where we don't necessarily see the right return for workers or for communities in terms of the wealth that they can generate from it.
Dougie, do you feel the same? The workers play an active role in shaping and developing policy, or do you respond to it in general?
I personally feel we're responding to it, but I do know that the workers in general in the sectors that we're talking about are really concerned because they're currently covered by collective agreements that gives them some kind of comfort. And as Ryan says, these agreements aren't forthcoming in the new energy, the green energy sectors, and it's not because we've not tried to engage with companies. It's been very difficult. They've been very reticent. We did suggest, one of my colleagues in Aberdeen suggested recently that the offshore oil and gas agreement that we operate with all the trade unions in Scotland and the employers should be extended to cover wind, and that was rebuffed by the wind companies. So we aren't in any way partners. Of course we want to be have a seat at the table, but to be fair, we're also not representing that many workers in that industry because it's a difficult industry. There's no the same numbers of people involved. I mean, a wind farm does not need a lot of people to look after it, to be fair. Whereas one oil rig could have 500, 600, 700 workers on it. And that's the issue. I keep on coming back to this, but that is the issue. There's this massive gap. Could I just say as well that, unfortunately for me, none of what I'm witnessing today in relation to trying to reach or reduce carbon emissions and the impact it's having on communities and workers is new, because I've been here before. Deindustrialisation took place a long time ago in Scotland. I live in a mining community where the pit's shut and there was no jobs to go to. I then lived through the oil boom, the supposed oil boom, and on my doorstep was an oil rig yard that made one of the first oil rigs in Scotland, and it closed down. Redpath Dorman Long it was called, became Bifab, it became Harland and Wolff, and it's now Navantia, with big huge gaps in between. And no answering the question, but coming back to the point about whether we feel that we're strategic partners, we're reactive because decisions are being made outside, sometimes outside of this country, and sometimes it's impacted heavily by regulation or policy of the UK government, which we have got obviously an input to, But we're all dealing with the same problem, which is to arrive at a destination that looks after people and communities while reducing carbon emissions. But we're not providing the detail of a plan on how we're going to arrive at that destination. It's actually the journey that's more important than the destination. Maybe the destination needs to be a wee bit further down the road until we've planned the journey.
Thanks, Dougie. Is there time to ask Claire just for a view on that, Daniel?
I think I might, just in the interest of time, need to move to Stephen Carr, but I know his question is in a related area, so you know, if I can get Stephen to ask his question, and Claire can obviously wrap her. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Convener, I think many of the questions I had in mind have already, thankfully, been asked. I think it would be good to hear just your response to the idea that under the Climate Change Act, the Climate Change Plan is supposed to deal in some detail with issues relating to skills, training and employment. What I'm hearing from you is something approaching a dissatisfaction about the fact that there's no clear idea about what we're transitioning from employment, high-skilled, high-paid jobs to what. So does the Climate Change Plan approach the issue of skills and jobs to the level of detail? I see Claire shaking her head already, so I'm going to come straight to Claire.
I apologise that I've kind of given you my answer in advance there. So the short answer is no. You know, and to expand on that, you know, we're calling it a plan. It seems more of a very good idea, you know, of where we could be if we lived in a perfect world, and you know, if we only had renewable energy and we only had renewable jobs. For it to be a plan, you know, it needs to begin with where we are just now. There's no mention of where we are just now. There's no mention of the industries just now. In fact, I think it was the sectorial contributions at the end was the first time that we mentioned the current oil and gas sector. There was, you know, it was nowhere else in the plan. So I have a real problem with it being called a plan, first of all, because I don't think it is. I think it's a very well written, you know, proposal, if you like. And I don't think it reflects where we are. I don't think it reflects what we need to do, and I don't think it reflects where we will actually end up, you know, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And you know, also, we have to take into account where we want to be. I know I've said it before, it's not just this badge of honour for net zero. Where do we want to be for a country? Do we want to be self-sufficient? Do we want energy security? Do we want investment in jobs? And if we do, you know, this is absolutely the way to do it. And if we get this wrong, you know, we will be destroying what has been built up for years within Scotland. We talk about our resources in Scotland. Let's look at the resources that we've got just now and how they can then, you know, be worked upon, so that if we talk about carbon capture, you know, how we can still utilise them, but also bring in the new guns, bring in the new renewables as well. That's fine. There's a place for everybody, but there has to be a mixed energy supply in Scotland to make sure that we're looking after the people, we're looking after our industry, and we're looking after our security as a country.
And what does that mean in terms of energy sources? You say mixed basket. I mean, there's been a number of kind of fleeting comments around nuclear, for example. Hinkley Point was mentioned specifically. What does the transition from a race to net zero to a race to energy security, which I think you said earlier was your objective, what does that look like in terms of a plan?
Well, I think it's, you know, in the simplest form, if we go from the top of the country to the bottom of the country, we have to go through the full supply chain. That includes manufacturing. It includes, you know, I was listening to the meeting last week as well, when there was a lot spoke about glassworks and cement works, chlorine, this kind of thing. We have to include all of these people within this plan. These are the people that keep our economy going. These are the people that offer good, well-paid jobs. So we go from the top to the bottom. What is it that we already have? What is it that we can utilise? We have a gas network, a gas distribution network in this country that is second to none. You know, it has been updated, it has been reinvigorated over the past 5-6 years. that is ready to go for us to see what else we can use that for, to see about using hydrogen, to see about including, you know, we're nuclear within the energy mix. Let's not get stuck on renewables. Absolutely, we need to use them. Absolutely, we need to reduce our emissions. And absolutely, we need to make sure that we can do the best we can as a country. But we need to look after the country and the people who work and live in that as well. Otherwise, what's the point? You know, what's the point in the whole game? But top to bottom, look at our resources that we have and let's everybody work together. Let's not all get greedy on, you know, what renewable companies can get with as little staff as possible, as little jobs as possible, and, you know, making as much revenue as they can. Let's look at what's keeping our country going and what works.
Our current approach, by the way you describe it, sounds like you feel that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you feel that we're on a path of self-harm.
100%.
Okay.
100%.
Dougie, going back to my original point around the plan and skills and jobs, do you feel there is any substance there that is worth commenting on?
There's no substance there, but I'm happy to comment on it.
Please do. I was counting on that, actually.
So, I mean, really, just quickly to amplify what's just been said there, the Westminster Scottish Affairs Committee have reached a similar conclusion to us, which is that we are absolutely throwing away and wasting a natural resource that isn't finished, which is oil and gas. And that they've recommended that we should decelerate the decline and that government, UK government, shouldn't be making any decisions that do what they're doing at this moment in time, accelerate decline. But to come back to the point about training and jobs, I just do have to say again that I think a lot of people are making a lot of money out of training and we're not finding any jobs at the end of it. So why would we not divert that money to somewhere else, which would obviously be job creation, or a mix? So, and I take the point and I agree with the point that we need a mix of all energy sources at this moment in time, whether they be new or old, because to do otherwise in a really difficult, volatile world is absolutely crazy, I would suggest. We're in a really difficult planet at this moment in time. And anybody could... actually, the truth of the matter is the majority of our resources are owned by other governments or other countries or other countries' banks. And any one of them could decide to switch that off or hike the prices and cause chaos in Scotland and the UK. I think we're playing fast and loose, not just with people's jobs and futures, but with the security of this country. And we've got an opportunity today to all encompass the move to new industries, new industry, new jobs, and a better world. But we can't throw away the natural resources we're currently using and need, and it's oil and gas. We can't throw away any more opportunities like Grangemouth or Moss Morn. There's a huge amount of money being spent, a huge amount of public money being spent supporting these workplaces, and we're not getting the return that we deserve and we've paid for, to be fair.
You could add Torness to that list as well, couldn't you?
Yeah.
You don't disagree with Claire substantially on anything she said, then? You're in the same place?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You did say, though, I don't know if I've got time.
Yeah, briefly.
I'd like you did say that you could foresee an explosion of work when you were talking about the free ports. Was that a vision you have for onshore manufacturing and all of that we currently don't have anything really to look at?
I got really excited about 18 months ago up in Inverness, speaking to the people from the Greenport, and it was a really exciting meeting. We're looking at the future, building social housing. People would get high-paid, quality jobs in the local area, so they wouldn't have to move away, which has always been a problem in Inverness and the Highlands, people having to move away to get good work.
Scotland's problem.
Well, it is. So you kind of buy into that vision. It looks exciting, but we're 18 months further down the line, and there's no spade in the ground in relation to manufacturing happening. And you just think, when is this going to happen? When is it coming? And I'm just worried that this draft climate change plan is maybe putting constraints on the future at the expense of current jobs in energy supply. And that worries me, because we really need to think about how we're going to get to where we need to go and take everybody with us, not just a select few.
Ryan, very little time, but do you want to say anything additional?
Yeah, I mean, I think
back to the convener.
just on the, I guess, the principles, the Climate Change Act principles, and what we would expect to see within the Climate Change Plan, maybe more directly, like the sections within the Climate Change Act on this do say that you would expect what should be within the plan is projections on how policies and proposals will impact employment and where that,
yes.
particularly where that
yes.
affects
That's in the
significant
Act.
regions.
Yeah.
That's in the Act. What the plan does is take a very broad brush approach to that, and what you see is maybe an overview of how employment might change across a whole sector, with like a specific region pulled out as maybe an issue. So on energy supply, there's an obvious focus on Aberdeen and the North East. What we would have been expecting there would have been far more granular detail on, as I spoke about already, in the transition to electric vehicles, what happens to the workers that currently work within car repair and mechanics and garages. That's the level of detail we're looking for. That's the level of detail that workers need to see to feel confident in what's happening. It's not how they've interpreted the requirement within the Climate Change Act, but if you're talking about a just transition, that's the level of detail that's going to need to see. I actually think one of the issues that we have here is that we don't currently have that detail. And what would be useful is to begin preparing it so that we can have a better look across the economy at how these, how the different policy interventions are going to affect employment in the regions, and also to understand how the new opportunities that Dougie spoke about. That I think that there are pockets of things happening, and I think XLCC and Hunterston's another example, a positive example. They've agreed an early recognition agreement with the GMB. You've also got Sumitomo also involved in cable manufacture, and Cromarty. Those are examples where there are going to be jobs created. There's been public support for those. We're not necessarily sure, what is the job profile of those going to look like? Does it match where we're seeing job losses elsewhere in the economy? Are they going to be opened up to them? Do we have the support and engagement of the private sector there to work with us on that? That's not clear. That's the level of detail that I think we would understand the Climate Change Act principles.
It sounds like you're saying we lack an industrial strategy.
Yes.
Okay.
Very good. The Deputy Convener assures me that she has one very brief final question. So
I suspect that it might be quite a brief answer from yourselves. It's just picking up on a point made earlier from my colleague Murdo Fraser, that the kind of the money aspect, when we've talked a lot about the how, is very prevalent. And I just wanted to check, in terms of your areas of knowledge, how much have you reflected on the restrictions of the fiscal framework for the Scottish Government, and the fact that they have a fixed budget and the medium-term capital expenditure outlook that's, of course, set these limits as a function of the fiscal framework? And how familiar are you with the fiscal sustainability perspective produced by the Scottish Fiscal Commission in terms of reflecting on availability of funding to deliver anything like this?
I'm happy to.
You've nodded, so you can go first.
Yeah, I mean, those restrictions, obviously, under devolved administration are there, and I don't think we're going to suggest that they're not. But I do think that there's elements, and I've touched on these, where money could be better spent in order to generate income, to generate revenue, as the example I made before of the Scottish National Investment Bank providing money to the Owner Wind Partnership, a private asset management firm, as opposed to enabling local authorities and other public bodies to get involved in that process in order to generate income there. That's an example of money being spent away rather than spent in and building on the potential there. And I'd say similar with GB Energy, I think there's examples here. GB Energy has prioritised public buildings for a lot of its investment.
But that's a different thing. I suppose my specific question, it's for all of you, is how much do you understand the limitations of the fiscal framework? Because more efficient spend would be a bite of a cherry against the funding requirements that are set out by the Scottish Fiscal Commission. So have any of you read that report? Okay. I mean, I'm not having a go at you. What I'm trying to point out, whether is it a fair question to ask, that in general terms, people are not really across the detail of the limitations on how, in terms of spend, for the Scottish Government, either spend themselves or crowding in spend as a function of the fiscal framework and a fixed budget. and all the detail of the numbers are set out in this report. My contention is it's not understood enough, and it's an important part that we need to increase that knowledge and understanding. So it's just because I'm aware of time.
I mean, I haven't read the report. I think my answer is still relevant in the context, though, which is that there is money moving overseas which could be retained, which would support.
But how could it be retained?
Through better ownership. Shares and
but if you don't have the power to do that, this is exactly the point I'm making.
I suppose that has been the conversation. I mean, particularly with energy, the Scottish Government said for a long time it doesn't have the power to take on large-scale energy ownership, but through its relationship with GB Energy last year, it has now taken an ownership share through the Scottish National Investment Bank of the Pentland Floating Wind Farm. So the power is there to do it, and I think beyond that...
That's the Scottish National Investment Bank. I mean,
sure,
I don't want to get into
a very specific point to the question, which goes a bit beyond the specifics of this conversation, which is, the SDUC has prepared papers on how we approach taxation in Scotland and how we could do a better job of making sure those with the broadest shoulders are contributing more to enable us to better be able to fund public services and the priorities of the government towards
by
just transition and
scale
wellbeing
wouldn't
economy.
be anywhere near the quantum of spending. And anyway,
I appreciate the point.
I mean, I think what we're demonstrating is, I think, when it comes to a just transition and the impact on workers, there's a huge amount that we need to focus on cost. And look, can I just thank all of our panellists this morning for their very interesting contributions. This is going to be very useful for our work. And I just wish that we had more than an hour to cover this off. But thank you so much. I'll briefly suspend it in order to allow for a changeover in panellists and layout of the room. We'll suspend for 2 minutes. We now continue with agenda item number 2, which is stage 2 consideration of the Community Wealth Building Scotland Bill. I will briefly explain the procedure we will follow during today's proceedings for anyone watching. Members should have with them a copy of the bill, the marshalled list and the groupings. These documents are available on the bill webpage on the Scottish Parliament's website for anyone observing. I will call each amendment individually in the order of the marshalled list. The member who lodged the amendment should either move it or say not moved when it is called. If the member who lodged the amendment does not move it, any other member present may do so. The groupings of amendments sets out the amendments in the order in which they will be debated. There will be one debate on each group of amendments. In each debate, I will call the member who lodged the first amendment in the group to move and speak to that amendment and to speak to all other amendments in the group. I will then call other members with amendments in the group to speak to, but not move, their amendments, and to speak to other amendments in the group if they wish to do so. At my discretion, I will call any other members who wish to speak in the debate. Members wishing to speak should indicate by catching either my or the clerk's attention. I will then call the Minister if he has not already spoken in the debate. And finally, I will call the member who moved the first amendment in the group to wind up and either press the amendment or seek to withdraw the amendment. If the amendment is pressed, I will put the question on the amendment. If a member wishes to withdraw an amendment after it has been moved and debated, I will ask whether any member present objects. If there is an objection, I will immediately put the question on the amendment. Later amendments to the group are not debated again when they are reached. If they are moved, I will put the question on them straight away. If there is a division, only committee members are entitled to vote. Voting is by show of hands. It is important that members keep their hands raised clearly until the clerk has recorded their names. If there is a tie, I must exercise a casting vote. The committee is also required to consider and decide on each section of the schedule of the bill and the long title. I will put the question on each of these provisions at the appropriate point. And with that, we move to section 1, and I call the Amendment 30 in the name of Lorna Slater, grouped with the amendments as shown in the groupings. And I must also point out that if Amendment 70 is agreed to, I cannot call Amendments 71 and 72. I will also need to point out that Amendments 21 and 74 are direct alternatives. That is, they can both be moved and decided upon, and the text of whichever is the last agreed to is what will appear in the bill. I now ask Lorna Slater to move Amendment 30 and to speak to all other amendments in the group. Lorna Slater.
Thank you, Convener. I move Amendment 30 in my name. My amendments in this group are intended to make the Community Wealth Building Bill more robust and to ensure that it adheres in a coherent way to the principles of community wealth building. Amendments 30 and 32, by structuring the statement's objectives around the community wealth building pillars and connecting it to the national performance framework, this intends that the bill will hardwire community wealth building into Scotland's broader economic, social and environmental architecture. I've got a particular interest in Amendment 70. A bill with a single purpose is much clearer and easier to implement than one with two possibly conflicting purposes. The goal of pursuing economic growth is to maximise GDP, which is very much at odds with the goal to reduce inequality and to support the little local guy against big corporations. Economic growth was not identified by any witnesses at the Economy and Fair Work Committee as being a useful metric to measure community wealth building, and I would argue that it has no place in this bill. We are trying to grow something entirely different here. Resilience, local wealth. We aren't just trying to maximise GDP, so why reference something that can only be measured in GDP? We know GDP is not an effective measure of community wealth building. If you measure the wrong thing, you get the wrong outcomes. So why not remove this from the bill altogether and remove the confusion? On Amendment 40, I'm explicitly calling out the development of community-owned renewable energy, given the size and importance of this sector to communities across Scotland, not to mention the opportunities it offers. Amendment 21 is a may to must change to ensure consistency and impact across Scotland. And Amendment 79, not all local authorities currently even comply with the statutory duty they have on common good land and assets registers. And without a deadline for this compliance, they have just failed utterly. They've had 10 years to do this, and it's time to press them on this. With respect to Sarah Boyack's Amendment 73, I actually think that individuals need to build wealth too, not just businesses and organisations. When individuals own shares in a local enterprise or take dividends from a community energy project, they are sharing in the wealth, which I think is right. So unfortunately, I cannot support Sarah Boyack's Amendment 73. That's me, Convener.
Thank you. I'd now like to invite the Minister to speak to Amendment 71 and any other amendments in this group.
Thank you, Convener. And I'll start by confirming that the Government will be supporting Lorna Slater's Amendment 21, making the list of measures in Section 1.3 mandatory rather than discretionary. I think it's right that a core compulsory suite of measures be covered in a community wealth building ministerial statement. However, I think it's a fit-for-purpose course set was included in the bill introduction, subject to some small modifications, which are the subject of amendments in my name in the next group. Let me cover the one amendment in the group that is in my name. Amendment 71 seeks to make it clear that while community wealth building is an economic policy that can make a contribution to growth, the form of growth we seek is sustainable and inclusive. I know that Lorna Slater has lodged Amendment 70 to remove Section 1.2b from the bill entirely. However, I consider the pursuit of growth to be critical for Scotland's economic future and a core objective of the bill. And I don't think the bill mentions GDP per se. I hope the member can withdraw her amendment and support the amendment in my name to clarify the nature of the growth sought, and I would urge all members to support Amendment 71 in my name. On Sarah Boyack's Amendment 72, the Government will support this amendment while there is room for debate about whether any particular economic growth is or is not in line with the UN resolution referenced in the 2009 Act, to which the amendment refers. I think that the Community Wealth Building Statement can encompass that, even if the UN goals themselves are due to be reviewed in 2030. So I'd urge members to support Amendment 72 and associated Amendment 117. The Government position in all other amendments in the group is not to support them. Taking each in turn briefly, I think that Amendment 30 is not required, chiefly as the pillars of community wealth building are already reflected, albeit not specifically referred to, in Section 1.3 of the bill as introduced. And I also have concerns that there may not be universal agreement about what the 5 pillars of community wealth building comprise, and using such high-level concepts in legislation without defining them could create uncertainty. Their implementation can best be taken forward in guidance. On Amendment 73 in Sarah Boyack's name, I think that highlighting community organisations and local businesses as the intended beneficiaries of community wealth building activity is too narrow. This amendment would restrict the measures that ministers could take in the community wealth building statement to those supporting the generation, circulation and retention of wealth just by community organisations and local businesses, not more broadly. Therefore, the Government does not attract government support. While I understand Sarah Boyack's Amendment 74 has the same intention as Lorna Slater's Amendment 21, I would ask the member to withdraw 74 and support 21. Essentially, I think this comes down to the word must being stronger and less ambiguous than should in this context. Regarding Amendment 40 in Lorna Slater's name, the Government position is that this activity in the energy policy context is best taken forward in guidance. The Government wants to avoid a lengthy prescriptive list of mandatory measures on the face of the legislation that must feature in a ministerial statement, and the current drafting offers the flexibility for these matters to be included without being specifically mentioned on the face of the bill. Amendment 32 in Lorna Slater's name, the Government does not support, as the actions set out in the statement will need time to evidence support of the delivery of NPF outcomes, describing in the statement the relevant indicators of success for community wealth building as an approach that any government should consider. However, in my view, it's not appropriate for primary legislation to oblige future administrations to abide by an overly exacting list of mandatory demands as to how they should approach the preparation of the statement. And finally, on Amendment 79, in the name of Lorna Slater, local authorities are already under a statutory duty in Section 102 of the Community Empowerment Scotland Act 2015 to establish and maintain a register of property held by the authority as part of the common good. That duty has been enforced since June 2018. If local authorities are not complying with a statutory duty within a reasonable timescale, I'm not clear that including provision within a statement will be effective in bringing them into compliance. To the extent that there is an issue with non-compliance by local authorities, the community wealth building statements proposed by this bill are not, in my view, the place to address that. One or two more general points, if I may, Convener. There's clearly widespread support for this bill among stakeholders, but it's important that we give this community wealth building the best chance to succeed. And I think that requires a clear focus and the bill to create a consistent platform for implementation. And it's therefore important to avoid unnecessary administration burdens on public bodies, local authorities and others. And I think the importance of the guidance in this regard, which you'll be aware of the work we've done on that, is important. So thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much, Minister. I'd now like to call Sarah Boyack to speak to Amendment 72 and any other amendments in the group. Sarah Boyack.
Thank you very much, Convener. I've got 4 amendments in this group, and those amendments were crafted with the assistance of Community Land Scotland. And the aim of my amendments is to strengthen the legislation by ensuring that the general principles of the bill prioritise the wealth generated to be retained by community organisations and local businesses. My Amendment 72 ensures that the general aims and outcomes of the bill are in line with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I think that's absolutely critical. It would mirror the language of the National Performance Framework, recognising that financial wealth cannot be separated from social, cultural, environmental and community wealth. So I welcome the Minister's support for my Amendment 72. My Amendments 73 and 4 insert stronger wording to ensure that the measures are truly promoting opportunity, development and equality for community organisations. As these are crucial, they shouldn't be options. And lastly, my Amendment 117 ensures that the UN Sustainable Development Goals are properly defined and included within the legislation. I'm hoping we're going to have constructive discussions. Sometimes there's slight variations of options, must, should or may. So hopefully when we get to the votes, we will actually strengthen the bill. Even if not all our amendments are totally possible to be agreed at the same time. Back to you, Convener. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Murdo Fraser has indicated he'd like to come in. Murdo.
Thank you very much, Convener. You'll be pleased to know I don't intend to comment on every single amendment in this group, or indeed subsequently. I thought I'd just set out briefly some general thoughts on our approach to the bill. We very much support the concept of community wealth building, and we support the bill in principle. I was a little bit dismayed to see quite so many amendments put down, many of which deal with matters which, in my view, are extraneous and should not be forming part of the bill at all. I'm also conscious of the fact that where we're dealing with community wealth building plans, these are to be determined by other bodies. They're to be determined by public bodies or, in some cases, local authorities. And in my view, we should not be trying to tie the hands, particularly of local authorities, by setting centrally very prescriptive rules about what they could and should not be doing. That should be a matter for local determination and local decision making. So there's quite a number of amendments we'll come to later in our discussions where we will not be supporting on that particular basis, because we don't think this Parliament should be telling local authorities how they should be setting out these community plans. And I would associate myself with the Minister's closing comments about the need for focus, which I think potentially gets lost if we accept too many amendments that will restrict the ability of bodies, including local councils, to draw up their plans with local flexibility, taking into account the views of those stakeholders who they have to relate to. So that's our general approach. If I just comment briefly on a couple of the amendments, I don't think Lorna Slater will be hugely surprised to say we won't be supporting Amendment 70 in her name to remove the reference to economic growth. In our view, economic growth is absolutely essential if we're going to deliver the successful Scotland we all want to see. So we want to see that retained. I'm a bit disappointed with the Minister feeling he has to qualify the term economic growth in Amendment 71. I think that's probably unnecessary, and we won't be supporting that particular amendment when it comes to the vote. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. And if I may, I'll just briefly comment on this section myself. First of all, can I associate myself with the comments that have been made by a number of members about the support for the general principles of the bill and the need for a bill that actually provides a useful and practical framework for the organisations that will be tasking with developing community wealth building plans. I would just like to briefly comment on Amendment 70 and Lorna Slater's name and associate myself with actually the comments made by the Minister. In my view, I don't think economic growth is such a narrowly drawn term. I think it can be interpreted in a number of different ways. I think, in my view, it's about ensuring that we have an economy that develops, and indeed growth can be measured in a number of ways, which I would include in terms of productivity growth, in terms of income growth for individuals, and in terms of progressing equality and equity within local economies. I think all of those things can be encompassed within a concept of economic growth. And those are the sorts of things that, and the types of economic growth we absolutely do want to see in our communities and do want to see community wealth building, ensuring that it develops. With that, I will move back to Lorna Slater and invite her to wind up and also to press or withdraw Amendment 30. Lorna Slater.
No additional remarks, Convener, and I will press Amendment 30.
So the question is that Amendment 30 be agreed to? Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, so there will therefore be a division. And can I just ask members in favour to raise their hands now if they are agreed? And can I now ask members who are voting against to raise their hands now? Thank you. And those members who wish to abstain, if they raise their hands now. Thank you. So we had 3 votes in favour, 6 votes against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, this amendment has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 70 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 30. And I remind members that if Amendment 70 is agreed to, I cannot call Amendments 71 and 72 on the basis of pre-emption. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 70 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed to. Therefore, we move to a division. Will all those members in favour of Amendment 70 please raise their hands now? Thank you. All those members against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And all members who wish to abstain. So there was 1 member in favour, 8 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, this amendment has not been agreed. Yes, and I call the amendment and call Amendment 71 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 30. Minister, to move formally.
I moved.
The question is that Amendment 71 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. No. We are not agreed, therefore we move to a division. Can I invite all members who wish to vote in favour of this amendment to raise their hands now? Thank you. All those members who wish to vote against, please raise their hands now. And are there any members who wish to abstain? So I always feel I need to ask that last question for completeness' sake. Thank you very much. We had 6 members voting in favour, 3 members voting against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 71 has been agreed to. I call Amendment 72 in the name of Sarah Boyack, already debated with Amendment 30. Sarah Boyack, to move or not move?
Moved.
The amendment has been moved. Therefore, the question is that Amendment 72 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are not agreed. Therefore, we move to a division. All those members in favour of Amendment 72, please raise their hands now. All those members against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And are there any abstentions? Thank you. So there were 7 members voting in favour, 2 against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 72 has been agreed to. I now call Amendment 73 in the name of Sarah Boyack, already debated. Sarah Boyack, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is then, is Amendment 73 agreed to? Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, so we move to a division. Can I ask all members who are in favour of Amendment 73 to raise their hands now? All those against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. Abstentions? We had 2 members voting in favour, 7 against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 73 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 40 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 30. Lorna Slater, to move or not move? Move. The question then is that Amendment 40 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed. Therefore, we move to a division. Can I ask all those in favour of Amendment 40 raise their hands now? All those against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And abstentions? We have 3 members voting in favour, 6 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 40 has not been agreed to. So we now move on to the next grouping. And I call Amendment 46 in the name of Richard Leonard, grouped with amendments as shown in the groupings. Now invite Richard Leonard to move Amendment 46 and to speak to all amendments in the group. Richard Leonard.
Thank you very much, Convener. And can I move Amendment 46 and all the other amendments in my name in this group? What these amendments are attempting to do is to promote, to realise the potential of employee ownership in the economy. So instead of being quite so reliant on foreign direct investment and instead of continuing to become more and more of a branch plant economy, we look at ways in which we can reintroduce more local and democratic forms of control. Employee ownership has been shown to be good for the retention and creation of jobs, good for local and inclusive economic development, and it also cultivates a longer-term thinking. I've been an advocate of a Marcora-style law for some time. This dates back to 1985, when a right-wing Italian politician, actually, Giovanni Marcora, introduced a statutory right for workers in Italy to be able to buy an enterprise that they worked in if it was facing closure or bankruptcy. It's since been amended to give those workers a preferential right, a right of first refusal, and it commutes their redundancy payments and 3 years' worth of future unemployment benefits to help give them the capital to make that conversion. And in turn, that's matched by the state on a one-to-one lira and more recently euro basis, and there is also support from cooperative federation funds as well. So Amendment 49 is an attempt to fashion that Marcora idea within legislative competence here. And in so doing, it broadens the statutory right. So it's not just in circumstances of bankruptcy or closure, but in the event of a business being up for sale, perhaps the owner looking for a succession plan, or if it's the subject of a takeover or facing downsizing, then there would be a right for workers to make a bid under those circumstances to take the enterprise over. And for me, it captures the spirit of the Land Reform Act and the Community Empowerment Act and brings that into the arena of industrial reform. Of course.
I'm grateful to Richard Lennon for giving way. I think he makes a really interesting case. I suppose my question is, does he think that really fits in this bill, which is about something somewhat different, about the preparation of community wealth building plans?
Yes, I think it's absolutely central to the bill because it's about retaining wealth in a local area. It's about looking at ways in which we can wealth build in a community. And what I'm describing is a community of interest in the manifestation of the workforce. I also think that it's in keeping with a long-standing tradition in Scotland, which goes back to Robert Owen and New Lanark, but also back, Mr Coffey, to 1761 and the Fenwick Weavers, which was the first cooperative society ever created. Amendments 46 and 50 consider some practical measures within competence to be included in the Minister's Community Wealth Building Statement. So Amendment 46 is a recognition that while statutory redundancy payments and the regime that governs them are reserved, under Scots law, contract law is devolved. And so, again, borrowing from the example of the Marcora law, long-standing, I've sought to look at ways in which we can use within our competence equivalent measures. And what we've come up with is the idea that any statutory redundancy, i.e. contractual redundancy written maybe into an employee's handbook or in some written contractual form, could be called upon to be brought forward to be commuted. Of course, yes.
Richard Lennon, when it comes to putting something on the face of a bill that includes words like ministers must include encouraging businesses, how exactly would you frame a statutory responsibility in the minister when you're using words like encouraging?
Well, Mr Kerr, we start from where we are. I would like to have seen a much more ambitious bill in the first place, but this is largely a framework bill, which is about laying down markers, which is about encouraging rather than necessarily directly acting. So what I'm proposing here with these amendments is that this is included in the ministerial plan and any future ministerial statement, that this is something which is addressed at that level.
If you give way on that point,
Sure.
I mean, encouraging is a form of action, though. Would he accept that? Would you accept that?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll talk about encouraging in another context shortly, right. And that might be a better way of showing exactly what I mean and a recognition of where some of the limitations are. The other thing that I wanted to turn to is Amendment 50, which again is an attempt just to bring up the idea that there could be, within the context of an employee-owned conversion, a financing member external to the enterprise. And again, this committee will be very familiar with the work that Scottish Enterprise, other enterprise agencies do in trying to pitch to business angels and to other external financial sources to help invest in the Scottish economy. Amendment 47, also for the ministerial statement, is something which I think is important, again, in the context of community wealth building, which is to challenge outsourcing, and which is to understand that a founding principle of community wealth building is to stop leakage and to build greater self-sufficiency in a local economy. So we should be, in my view, encouraging insourcing, not outsourcing, of public services. And we have seen, in my view, good examples of that in recent years. The most recent Audit Scotland report into the National Health Service has shown evidence of the extent to which bank and agency nursing has been reduced and more of those services are now provided in-house. But much wider than that, Mr Coffey will again be familiar with HMP Kilmarnock, which was outsourced, which has now been insourced, of Cumnock Community Hospital, which was outsourced and is now insourced, in Lanarkshire, where Serco had the contract at Wishaw General Hospital. That has now been insourced, and on the railways, where Abellio and Serco had the contracts, that again has now been insourced. So I think what I'm talking about in this amendment is perfectly consistent with the positions which have been taken during the course of this Parliament. I'm also bound to draw, with your indulgence, Convener, on a recent STUC commissioned report into outsourcing, which pointed out that outsourcing of social care and soft facilities, which is often the services which are outsourced, is in effect meaning that women and women's jobs are much more likely to be outsourced than men's jobs. And so I think that is a consideration. And para 9.3 of that STUC report addresses the 5 pillars of community wealth building. And it says, each of these elements of community wealth building is undermined by the outsourcing of public services. Smaller economic delivery units are most likely to re-spend money earned from providing services at a local level. The smallest economic unit of delivery is directly employed staff, and the shortest supply chain is direct provision. If I can turn to Amendment 48, also in my name and also part of the proposed ministerial statement, democratic forms of ownership in financial services is, again, I think, a part and parcel of what we should be encouraging in a Community Wealth Building Act passed by this Parliament. Mutually owned banks, building societies, credit unions, municipal banks should be a part and parcel of the mosaic of community wealth building, which we should be considering the promotion of. And I recognise that it was a feature of the Stage 1 report of this committee in paras 114 to 124, where it recognised that finance is one of the key pillars of community wealth building. And I also reflect on the fact that it was something which the Deputy Convener referred to in her speech during the Stage 1 debate. Amendments 49 and 50 I've dealt with. Amendment 51, which again is part of the ministerial statement, and that is to call on Scottish Enterprise, Highlands and Isles Enterprise and South of Scotland Enterprise and the Scottish National Investment Bank to encourage and support employee-owned businesses. And I reflect that the chair of the Scottish National Investment Bank, Willie Watt, told me at a meeting of the Public Audit Committee on the 25th of June 2025, and let me quote him directly, employee ownership is to be encouraged because it is good from the point of view of aligning the workforce with the success of the organisation and its long-term nature. I have long been a supporter of employee ownership. So what I'm doing with this amendment, Amendment 51, is literally reflecting that view with this amendment, and I'm also amplifying one of the principal conclusions of the Scottish Government's review, which looked into inclusive and democratic business models, which was launched in September 24, chaired by Neil McEnroy, which in Recommendation 11 called for the Scottish Government to grow the role of the Scottish National Investment Bank to intentionally and specifically support inclusive democratic business models. And if I can finish, Convener, with Amendments 58 and 59, they go back to insourcing, not outsourcing, municipal banks, mutual banks and building societies and credit unions, but addressed in this context to the local community wealth building partnerships.
Thank you. I'd now like to invite Lorna Slater to speak to Amendment 41 and any other amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. As with other colleagues, I've proposed amendments in this group to add detail to the measures to be taken, including explicitly calling out fair work, community transport, support for cooperatives and community energy. In the interest of time, I'll only highlight a few of these. On my amendments 2 and 14, it looks like the Minister has brought amendments 75 and 87 to cover the same ground, so I'm content not to move those amendments. 36 is an amendment that clarifies that commissioning and procurement are separate but related activities to ensure local authorities are fully able to include commissioning in their wealth building planning. 31 and 37 looks at when local authorities and public bodies dispose of land and other assets. It considers that they must think of something other than getting the most money. They must also consider how the asset fits into the community's vision for itself and the common good. This is vital to local authorities being able to implement each community's vision for itself. 4 and 16 seek to include a consideration of local climate resilience and mitigation into community wealth building, for example, distributed and local power generation to ease local generation in the case of storm grid damage to the grid, flood protections for the community and of community land. Amendment 22 seeks to recognise the importance of constructive and collaborative joint venture opportunities between communities and public bodies. This would be an important step to formalising these relationships and creating new opportunities, but I'm interested to hear what colleagues have to say on this amendment and will consider whether to press it. On Amendment 43, for the Scottish Government to work with the UK Government, I'm not sure this needs legislation, Minister, and I'd like to hear from the Scottish Government to commit to undertaking that work, to work with the UK Government. If the Minister is able to commit to that, I will not press that amendment. I'm content with many of my colleagues' proposed amendments in this section and will be supporting them, but there are a few which I find problematic, which I cannot. And in the interest of time, I'll highlight just a few of these in the hopes that we can revisit them at stage 3. Richard Leonard's amendment number 50. The first half of the amendment is fine, but I cannot support the second half. My understanding is that the whole point of the Scottish National Investment Bank is that it is independent and free from government interference in its investment decisions. And I think that it is right that this is so. So any attempts through legislation to get the Scottish Government to lean on the bank undermine its independence, and I won't be supporting any amendments in this bill which do this. The only exception to this will be Richard Leonard's Amendment 51, which I think is sufficiently vague to not undermine the bank in that way. On 76 and 88, I'm particularly, and I'd like members to pay close attention to this one. On the government's amendments 76 and 88, I'm particularly worried about the Minister's amendment. My concern is that the way this is phrased may cover external and foreign investment, which is exactly the opposite of community wealth building. The whole point is for communities and Scottish people to acquire assets and build wealth, not to bring in external people who will invest and acquire this for themselves. On the face of this, these amendments appear to totally undermine the purpose of the bill, and I would strongly request that the Scottish Government withdraw this amendment at stage 2 and reconsider the wording before stage 3, or risk undermining the bill altogether. On 119, with Paul Sweeney's amendment, I agree with the idea, but I'm just not sure he's put it into the right part of the bill, so I won't be supporting that one. On 120, I'm unclear what Paul Sweeney is proposing here, that ministers lean on credit unions to make potentially bad loans. That doesn't seem to make sense to me. I would support an amendment which supported new credit unions, the expansion of credit unions, or supported community groups to engage with credit unions, but I can't support Amendment 120 as worded. Thank you, Convener.
I'd like to invite Paul Sweeney to speak to Amendment 119 and other amendments in the group. Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Convener, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to these amendments. I think the context of them generally in this bill is the fact that Scotland is one of the most foreign-owned economies in the world, and one of only a handful of such countries that is both rich and developed but is not a microstate or an outright tax haven. And a good indicator of this, although we don't often speak about the balance of payments or the capital and financial accounts in our economy, if you compare Scotland's gross domestic product and its gross national income, at the start of this Parliament, certainly £36.5 billion was extracted from Scotland, largely in the form of profits and dividends to foreign companies and shareholders, while only £26.4 billion flowed into Scotland, largely as foreign investment income. So that creates a net outwards flow of £10.1 billion in 2021. I think the need for measures in the bill to retain more wealth under domestic ownership is important, and that's why my amendments seek to do that in some meaningful and in practical ways. So Amendment 119 looks to broaden the bill slightly by adding the option of purchasing community shares as an optional measure to fulfil the goal of reducing inequality and supporting economic growth. Amendment 120 adds credit unions simply by mentioning them as one of the bodies that can be supported and promoted within the bill. I think it's vital that when considering community groups, the credit unions that underpin so much of the financial transactions, particularly in working class areas of Scotland, are encouraged to flourish and should be explicitly mentioned on the face of the bill. Amendment 80 seeks to encourage steps that the Scottish ministers will take to encourage and support the Scottish National Investment Bank to develop a community wealth fund, to work with relevant public bodies and community organisations to provide financing for community wealth building projects, advise on the strategic use of community benefit payments, including from the change of land use, renewable energy projects and seed funding for community-led wealth building projects. I think securing funding for community wealth building activities is essential to ensure that local communities and other organisations can take full advantage of the economic transformation that these activities provide, and simply grant funding isn't sufficient. I think patient finance is important. So the creation of a community wealth fund has been the subject of much discussion over the past couple of years, with detailed proposals for such a fund being put forward by the Scottish Community Coalition on Energy. These proposals would allow for the strategic and democratic use of additional payments from major renewable energy and infrastructure projects, most of which are in foreign ownership, and major land use change projects, to seed fund community wealth building projects around the country. So I think the amendment aligns with Amendments 78 and 90 from Sarah Boyack, which sets out how community wealth building guidance, action plans and statement be introduced by the bill should make reference to this community wealth fund. An amendment would mandate a role for the Scottish National Investment Bank in providing finance for community wealth building activities, including this community wealth fund, noting that place is one of the bank's three missions, and taking account of the transformational potential of expanding that access to finance, which is not currently provided by commercial banks generally. As the committee noted at stage 1, the Scottish National Investment Bank should have a prominent role in supporting economic development. The bank should have a key role as a public sector leader and a source of potential patient capital and underwriting for community wealth building. So this amendment seeks to ensure that the important role for the bank is stated on the face of the bill. Amendment 121 adds a role that the Scottish National Investment Bank should be encouraging community wealth building, and this allows for a more holistic approach to economic growth and puts investment at the heart of community building, not just simply one-off windfalls, but sustained investment through ownership. This Amendment 126 also adds the option of purchasing community shares as an optional measure to fulfil the goal of reducing inequality and supporting economic growth as part of the community wealth building plan, which is the norm in many other European countries. And also Amendment 127 encourages credit unions to be part of that ecosystem as an organisation which contains members that are benefiting from community wealth building plans. Thank you very much, Convener.
Thank you. And can I invite the Minister to speak to Amendment 75 and other amendments in the group? Minister.
Thank you, Convener. So this is a large group of amendments. I will try to be brief. Let me begin by talking to the 5 amendments in my name, and I'll then comment on those lodged by others. Amendments 75 and 87 seek to ensure that supported businesses are listed in the bill alongside employee-owned businesses, cooperatives and social enterprises. Supported businesses are clearly important to many disabled workers who want access to work, and these amendments seek to ensure that promoting supported businesses can feature both in the statement and the local community wealth building action plans. Indeed, as the Scottish Government intends to support Amendment 1 in the name of Lorna Slater in a different group, the committee supports that amendment, and Amendment 75, common choice supported businesses, will have to feature in the ministerial statement. The intention of Amendments 76 and 88 is to ensure that the financial pillar of community wealth building is represented in the list of measures that may feature in the statement and local action plans by referring to the promotion of access to investment opportunities. Amendment 81 seeks to ensure that ministerial statement is future-proofed. I think that giving the Scottish Ministers through regulation the power to modify the list of measures that feature in the ministerial statement is prudent, especially if Amendment 21 is supported. Further, I think it's right that any regulation of this nature be subject to the affirmative procedure. So I would urge members to support all 5 of those amendments in my name. Regarding the amendments, other amendments in the group, while I appreciate the motivation for all of the amendments lodged by colleagues, and of course my door is open to further discussion prior to stage 3, I can confirm the government position is to resist all amendments in this group, apart from amendments 3, 4, 36, 15, 16 in Lorna Slater's name, amendment 51 in Richard Leonard's name, and amendment 86 in Rhoda Grant's name. And I would urge members to support those amendments, but not the others in the group. So I'll now quickly set out the rationale for the government's position with reference to those amendments lodged by members. I see merit in exploring the proposals that Richard Leonard has raised in his other amendments, apart from 51, which we are supporting, through further policy dialogue. I think that they need more consultation with stakeholders, including COSLA, as well as further consideration from a legal and cost standpoint before a proposition for primary legislation can be framed. As I've indicated in my conversations with Mr Leonard, I'm sympathetic to the concepts in the Marcora approach and Italian legislation, but clearly a significant part of that would impinge on reserved legislation with regards to corporate law and employment law, and that would need to be considered. With regard to cooperatives, I think those are already in the bill. If you look at Section 1(3)(f explicitly mentions supporting the development of cooperatives. And with regard to insourcing, I think understand his intentions here, but I think the unintended consequence of that, if there was a preference for insourcing over outsourcing, would of course be to prevent, through public procurement, the very businesses that we're trying to support locally from gaining contracts with public enterprises. I also think that the work of the Economic Democracy Group, whose formation was a recommendation of the Scottish Government's commissioned independent review on developing Scotland's inclusive and democratic businesses, should include consideration of the proposals Richard Leonard has brought forward, as it continues to consider all recommendations made by the original review. I appreciate Lorna Slater's strong interest in the bill and the work she's done on a range of amendments. However, in this group, the position is to resist all of the members' amendments except those already indicated. And while I have a sympathy with some of the policy ideas driving many of the amendments, I think they need further consultation and, in some cases, detailed consideration of extant law. As I've said, I want to keep this legislation focused on economic development, specifically the creation of new local format for local economic development actions. And other policy areas, of course, feed into a successful economy. However, I do not want to overburden future community wealth building ministerial statements with mandatory asks for inclusions of matters staying across too wide a range of government policies. In keeping with all amendments lodged at stage 2 by opposition members, I will expect my officials to feature the ideas driving them in future community wealth building policy development, including preparation of guidance, which, as indicated, is already underway. The government position is to resist amendments in Paul Sweden's name in this group for similar reasons as I've already set out. I think they need more policy development and stakeholder dialogue, as well as work on resultant costs. Again, I have an interest in the themes raised through these amendments and look forward to further policy dialogue into the next session. However, I think it's too early to commit them to primary legislation without that work being done. And in relation to Sarah Boyack's amendments focused on promoting the creation of a community wealth fund on the part of both Scottish ministers and local community wealth building partnerships, I think this is a complex area of work requiring more design thinking and dialogue, which I'm very happy to engage with the member on. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Minister. I'd now like to invite Sarah Boyack to speak to Amendment 78 and other amendments in the group. Sarah Boyack.
Thank you, Convener. I've got 2 amendments in the grouping, and these amendments ensure that the promotion of a community wealth fund and the strategic use of community benefit payments from land use change and renewable energy projects would support the development of community-led projects as prioritised and included on the face of this bill. And by embedding the promotion of such a fund in the bill, you create a pathway for communities to benefit directly from the economic activity taking place around them, not as an afterthought, but as a core principle. And this approach ensures that the wealth generated from our natural assets and the transition to renewables is recycled back into local priorities, supporting projects that communities themselves design, lead and control. And I have to say that last night in here we had a cross-party group on islands and cross-party group on energy efficiency and renewables meeting, and we heard directly from the huge benefits to local communities where cooperative, community or municipally owned renewables and heat projects are actually investing now in Scotland. But it's rather than exporting wealth, the communities directly benefit and they shape the benefits. They benefit from them. And if you look at our renewables projects, I think the stat last night used was that less than 1% of the energy produced in Scotland in terms of wind is community owned. So there's a huge opportunity here and we need to make the most of it. Just to briefly comment on other amendments, I think Richard Leonard's amendments are really important. Numbers 50 and 51 in particular, I think the points he made are really important. The importance of cooperative development in Scotland and the Scottish National Investment Bank, that needs to be higher up our agenda. It needs to be in terms of legislation, the important role that both not just could play, but should play. And then the reference in Amendment 51 to Scottish Enterprise, South of Scotland Enterprise, Highlands and Islands Enterprise, to practically support employee-owned companies is crucial because we need to make sure that those opportunities are available. I was very keen to support Lorna Slater's amendments 41 to 45 about procurement so that local community, cooperative and social enterprises actually benefit from the renewables transition. And I think Paul Sweeney's amendment 119 in particular to empower and support communities through credit unions, community wealth funds. So there's so many good amendments in this section. I take the Minister's points that we can't use all of them, but I would say that the ambitions behind those that I've just mentioned are absolutely critical, and we should see these included in the face of the bill. Having a community wealth fund and the strategic use of community benefit payments is absolutely crucial, and there are so many opportunities in here. If we put them on the face of the bill... Yes, briefly.
Isn't Sarah Boyack creating effectively a lengthy wish list of things that from her perspective she would like to see happen, when in fact the bill is not intended to be used for that purpose, particularly in relation to the core concepts of community wealth building that we all actually share and support. By making this huge list with all these different dimensions and aspects, isn't this encumbering the bill and taking it in a direction that is quite different than the intention when it was drafted?
I would very much disagree with that point, respectfully. If you're to come back here in 5 years and see what difference has this piece of legislation made, without these amendments, it will not deliver the transformation that is in the aspiration of the bill, and we all support that, but it's about delivery, and I think that's a key lesson from Parliament. It's not just about warm words, it's about making sure that organisations are able to deliver, are supported to deliver, and that actually will make the change that is the ambition of this bill. At that point, I will conclude. Convener.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to invite Rhoda Grant to speak to Amendment 86 and other amendments in the group. Rhoda Grant.
Thank you, Convener. Amendment 86 adds a clause to the list of measures that may be used by a community wealth building partnership to facilitate and support the generation, circulation and retention of wealth in the local economy. It explicitly recognises common good property as a strategic asset for community wealth building. This amendment seeks to ensure that relevant public bodies use common good property as part of their action plan to deliver community wealth building. The Scottish Land Commission have explained that a common good property is regulated by the Common Good Act of 1491, which is still in force today, and it provides the legal status for common good assets, and it creates an obligation that they be managed for the benefit of citizens of what was the borough. Common good property has has historically given to people of the relevant borough that has over time largely been subsumed into local authorities. The Community Empowerment Act Scotland 2015 introduced responsibilities for local authorities on registration, use and disposal of community good assets. However, the way that that's been interpreted varies widely between local authorities. Reform of common good legislation must be addressed in the next Parliament. However, it would be a missed opportunity if the Community Wealth Building Bill didn't acknowledge the important role these assets have in generating local wealth. It would also help with adding transparency to what common good assets are owned by local authorities and how they could be better used to promote local wealth building, not least through transfer to community ownership in some instances. I welcome the Government's support of this amendment and would urge the committee to support it as well. It was brought forward with the help of Community Land Scotland to ensure that local authorities consider these assets proactively, unlocking their potential for social justice, sustainability and local prosperity.
Very much. I've not received any other indications that members wish to speak, so now I'd like to invite Richard Leonard to wind up and to press or withdraw Amendment 46. Richard Leonard.
Thank you very much, Convener, and thank heavens for small mercies. Can I thank the Minister for accepting Amendment 51, although I realise it's subject to the views of the committee. And can I also thank him for his dialogue and his offer of continuing dialogue between Stage 2 and Stage 3, which I will certainly take up, and I welcome that open approach. His suggestion that some of my amendments are better addressed to the Economic Democracy Group would be all well and good if the Economic Democracy Group had been established and was meeting, but it's my understanding that it is not. So that's something which is an interesting theoretical suggestion from the Minister, but not one we can actively take up. And on the issue of insourcing, I don't see that purely as an issue of procurement, although I've got an amendment on procurement later on which will be considered by the committee at Stage 2. But if you look at the examples I gave, I don't think HM Prison Kilmarnock was subject to some kind of franchising or procurement exercise when it was decided to bring that back in-house. And the example I use of ScotRail and the Caledonian Sleeper Service are other examples of that which his own government has been prepared to implement. So I recognise the point that he made in the Stage 1 debate about procurement and what that looks like. But I do also, though, think that we should be looking at insourcing versus outsourcing, not just in a procurement context. As I say, I've got an amendment on procurement to come. The final thing I think I would say, Convener, both to the Minister but also to members of this committee, is that if you haven't, you should go and visit some of these employee-owned businesses. Whether it's Carlton Bingo, Mr Fraser, in Dunfermline, which I went to also with a bingo hall in Stirling and in other places, which is now employee-owned. Gerber Campervans in the Lothians, which Sarah Boyack and Lorna Slater would be interested in. Clansman Dynamics, Mr Kerr in East Kilbride, which is part of the Central Scotland region. Your Equipment Solutions in Falkirk, which the Deputy Convener will have an interest in, I'm quite sure, as well as Mr Kerr and myself. The Ochrani Resort in Arran, I look to Mr Coffey for, although it's not in your constituency, it's an important part of that regional economy, employee-owned. And let me finish with Mr Stewart, where I can recommend the Krakatoa music bar venue in the Quayside in Aberdeen as a fine example of an employee-owned business which really includes its workforce in it. These are wonderful, pioneering businesses. Yesterday in the budget, the Cabinet Secretary for Finance said, let me quote, "Scotland is a country of innovators and wealth creators." I think these are great examples of innovation and wealth creation. I can think of no other finer examples than these, and we should be using this bill to try to encourage the development and advancement of that part of our economy.
Thank you very much, Richard. I noticed you missed my constituency, but Edinburgh Bicycle Cooperative, well, being a cooperative is a fine example of employee ownership. The question is that Amendment 46 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. Yes. We are not agreed, therefore we move to a division. Can I ask all those members in favour of Amendment 46 to raise their hands now? And all those members against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any amendments? Sorry. We've got amendments on the brain. Any abstentions? We had 3 members voting in favour, 6 against, 0 abstentions, and therefore Amendment 46 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 47 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 46. Richard Leonard, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question, therefore, is that Amendment 47 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore there will be a division. Can I ask all members who are in favour of Amendment 47 to raise their hands now? Could I ask all members against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? So there were 3 members in favour, 6 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 47 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 48 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 46. Richard Leonard, to move or not moved?
Moved, convener.
The question is that Amendment 48 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore there will be a division. Can I ask members in favour to raise their hands now? Members against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? We have 3 votes in favour, 6 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 48 is not agreed to. I now call Amendment 49 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 46. Richard Leonard, to move or not move?
Moved, convener.
Thank you. Therefore, the question is that Amendment 49 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed. Therefore, there will be a division. Can I ask members in favour to please raise their hands now? Those members against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? We had 3 members in favour, 6 members voting against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 49 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 50 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 46. Richard Leonard, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 50 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not agreed. Therefore, we will have a division. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 50 to raise their hands now? Thank you. And members against, please raise their hands now. And any abstentions? There were 2 votes in favour, 7 against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 50 is not agreed to. I now call Amendment 21 in the name of Lord and Slater, already debated with Amendment 30. I remind members that Amendments 21 and 74 are direct alternatives, that is, that they can be both be moved and decided on. The text of whichever is the last to be agreed will be that which appears in the bill. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 21 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. And I call Amendment 74 in the name of Sarah Boyack, already debated with Amendment 30. Sarah Boyack, to move or not move?
Not moved.
Amendment 74 is not moved. I now call Amendment 41 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 46. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 41 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed. There will be a division. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 41 to raise their hands now? Can I ask members against to raise their hands now? Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 3 members voting in favour, 6 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 41 is not agreed to. I now call Amendment 119 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated with Amendment 46. Paul Sweeney, to move or not move? Yes, he's intimating visually that the amendment is moved. The question is that Amendment 119 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore there will be a division. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 119 to raise their hands now? Thank you. And those members against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 119 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 1 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 46. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 1 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
No.
Yes. We are not agreed. There will be division. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 1 to raise their hands now? Thank you. Those members against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 1 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 2 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 46. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Not move.
Amendment 46 has not been moved. No, Amendment 2 has not been moved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the prompt, Ms Slater. I now call Amendment 3 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 46. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 3 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
We are not agreed, so we will divide. Can I ask those members in favour of Amendment 3 to raise their hands now? Thank you. Those members against, please raise their hands now. And any abstentions? There were 7 members in favour, 2 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 3 has been agreed to. I call Amendment 31 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 46. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 31 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
No.
Yes.
We are not agreed, therefore we will divide. Can I ask those members in favour of Amendment 31 to raise their hands now? Thank you. And those members against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? We had 3 members in favour, 6 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 31 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 75 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 46. Minister, to formally move.
Moved.
The question, therefore, is that Amendment 75 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
We are agreed. I now call Amendment 76 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 46. Minister, to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 76 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
We are not agreed, therefore we will divide. Can I ask all those members in favour of Amendment 76 to raise their hands now? Thank you. And those members against? Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 8 members in favour, 1 against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 76 has been agreed to. I call Amendment 4 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 46. Lorna Slater to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 4 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are not agreed, therefore we will divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 4 to raise their hands now? Thank you. Can I ask those members against to raise their hands? Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 7 members in favour, 2 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 4 has been agreed to. I now call Amendment 22 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 46. Lorna Slater to move or not moved?
Not move.
Amendment 22 has not been moved. I now call Amendment 42 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 46. Lorna Slater to move or not moved?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 42 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. Yes. We are not agreed, therefore we will divide. Can I ask all those members in favour to raise their hands now? Thank you. All members against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you very much. There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 42 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 43 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 46. Lorna Slater to move or not move?
Not move.
Amendment 43 has not been moved. I call Amendment 77 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 46. Lorna Slater to move or not move?
Move.
The question is... Just a moment. Yes, the question is that Amendment 77 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
No.
Yes.
We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 77 to raise their hands now? Thank you. Can I ask members against Amendment 77 to raise their hands now? Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 3 votes in favour, 6 against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 77 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 78 in the name of Sarah Boyack, already debated with Amendment 46. Sarah Boyack to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 78 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are not agreed. Therefore, we will divide. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 78 to raise their hands now? Thank you. Members against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 3 members in favour, 6 against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 78 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 120 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated with Amendment 46. Paul Sweeney to move or not move?
Move, Convener.
That has been moved. So the question is that Amendment 120 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore we will divide. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 120 to raise their hands now? Thank you. Those against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 120 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 32 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 30. Lorna Slater to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 32 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore we will divide. Can I ask those members in favour of Amendment 32 to raise their hands now? Thank you. Those members against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 3 members in favour, 6 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 32 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 33 in the name of Lorna Slater, grouped with Amendments 35, 54, 82, 83, 55 and 56. Lorna Slater to move Amendment 33 and to speak to all amendments in the group. Lorna Slater.
Thank you, Convener. Amendments 33 and 35 set standards for monitoring and data logging, including against agreed national metrics. This is all part of putting into place proper measurement of the progress on community wealth building, as well as so that we can have the data to understand the starting points and disparity between Scottish regions. I'll support Amendment 82 from Sarah Boyack, reporting on impact, but I'm not convinced of the value of an independent review on top of all the reporting measures, so I will not support 83. On Amendment 54, I think Richard Leonard has the right idea, but the details point in the amendment surely undermines commercial confidentiality. Cooperatives are still commercial enterprises and have the same confidentiality needs as other businesses, so I would hope to revisit this amendment at stage 3 if he would consider altering it. On 55 and 56, Richard Leonard's amendments, I don't think that annual reviews are a good use of resources. You would only have finished one report before you have to start another, and it would impede making progress. That's me, Convener. I move Amendment 33 in my name.
Thank you. I'd now like to invite Richard Leonard to speak to Amendment 54 and other amendments in the group.
Thank you very much, Convener. The review group that published its report in September 2024, which we've already referred to this morning, had a full title of Developing Scotland's Economy, Increasing the Role of Inclusive and Democratic Business Models. And it spoke in its opening pages of around the world, inclusive and democratic business models are not considered a sideline to the mainstream economy, but a vital, growing and essential part of economic success. And to do that, to ensure that you are achieving that goal of mainstreaming and making it successful, you must collect data and measure what's happening. So again, this amendment is picking up from that review group's findings, recommendation number 3, I quote, investment in data and evidence on IDBMs is required to support policy and service design. So that's really the main point I think I wanted to make with these amendments. More generally, I think that there needs to be transparency, openness, data sharing, so that we can make informed public policy choices.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Sarah Boyack to speak to Amendment 82 and other amendments in the group. Sarah Boyack.
Thank you, Convener. I've got 2 amendments in this group, and they're both aimed at strengthening accountability in the community wealth building statement process. Amendment 82 ensures that the annual statement reports not just on actions taken, but on their impact in delivering the aims set out in section 1/2. It shifts the focus from activity to outcomes, so we can see whether community wealth building is genuinely making a difference on the ground. So I very much welcome Lorna Slater's support for Amendment 82. Amendment 83 requires ministers to set out how they have responded to any recommendations from the independent review, and if they haven't acted, to explain why. I think that prevents recommendations from being ignored, and it ensures a clear line of accountability between independent scrutiny and government action. And together, I would argue that these amendments make the reporting process more transparent, more meaningful, and more responsive to evidence. And I think the points that Richard Leonard made about transparency and inclusivity are also really important as well. So I think these amendments in this group are actually about strengthening the legislation, and I hope colleagues will feel they can support them today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've not received any other indications from members to speak in this grouping, so I'd now like to invite the Minister to respond on behalf of the Government. Minister.
Thank you, Convener. The Government's position is to resist all amendments in this group except Amendment 82. And I would ask members lodging the remainder of the amendments to withdraw, and let me briefly explain why. With regards to Amendment 82, in the name of Sarah Boyack, I think the provision in the bill as it stands is proportionate in respect of progress reporting. However, reporting on the impact of the community wealth building statement and the measures contained within it in the way suggested by the amendment may complement the bill, so I'm content to support that. I know that Sarah Boyack has lodged Amendment 108, obliging Scottish Ministers to commission an independent review of the impact of the measures in the statement. Amendment 83 relates to reporting on steps taken in response to such a review. As it's the Government's position that it's Parliament to which they should be accountable and that primary legislation is not required for a future administration to commission an independent review, our position is therefore not to support Amendment 108 in Group 9 or Amendment 83 in this group that it is linked to. On Amendments 33 and 35 regarding the use of metrics, substantial dialogue with COSLA and others need to be conducted before including commentary on metrics in the guidance. The guidance must be prepared under Section 9. That must be prepared under Section 9 will be developed alongside the ministerial statement, and that guidance is the appropriate place to set out advice on monitoring progress. This is particularly important at the local level, where economic structures vary significantly between communities. At the national level, community wealth building connects to many other policy areas, so guidance will ensure coherence and alignment across these links. I think that work on measurement at large should be conducted as part of the guidance work strand. This will inform the approach of ministers to what could be in a national statement about targets and objectives. Amendment 54 in Richard Leonard's name specifically highlights reporting on businesses operating with inclusive and democratic business models, and that is an issue that may well feature in reports on progress required under Section 4. However, the amendment is too specific and obliging reporting on certain types of businesses only. Finally, the Government does not support Richard Leonard's Amendments 55 and 56, moving to a yearly reporting cycle instead of 5 yearly. Such a short reporting interval is not desirable in a policy context where change in outcome terms needs to be measured and observed over a longer timescale. I therefore urge members to not move, or if moved, to not support those amendments. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much, Minister. I now invite Lorna Slater to wind up and to press or withdraw Amendment 33.
No further remarks, Convener. I will press Amendment 33.
The question, therefore, is that Amendment 33 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore we will divide. Can I ask those members in favour of Amendment 33 to raise their hands now? Thank you. Those members against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 33 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 51 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 46. Richard Leonard to move or not move?
Moved, Convener.
The question, therefore, is that Amendment 51 be agreed to. Well, all those members... are we all agreed?
Yes.
We are not agreed, therefore we will divide. Can I ask all those members in favour of Amendment 51 to raise their hands now? Thank you. All those against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 7 members in favour, 2 against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 51 has been agreed to. I now call Amendment 79 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 30. Lorna Slater to move or not moved?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 79 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 79 to raise their hands now? Thank you. And those against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 79 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 80 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated with Amendment 46. Paul Sweeney to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 80 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are not agreed, therefore we will divide. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 80 to raise their hands now? Thank you. Those members against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 2 votes in favour, 7 against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 80 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 121 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated with Amendment 46. Paul Sweeney, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 121 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 121 to raise their hands now? And those against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 121 has not been agreed to. We now, I now call Amendment 122 in the name of Paul Sweeney, grouped with Amendments 123, 23, 5, 52, 34 and 53. Paul Sweeney, to move Amendment 122 and speak to all amendments in the group. Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Convener. This amendment 122 seeks to insert a requirement for the Scottish Ministers to respond to the report on developing Scotland's economy. This would be an important measure because it adds democratic business models to the heart of the bill by making it a requirement for Scottish Ministers to respond to that report, Developing Scotland's Economy, which explores inclusive and democratic business models, and to actively consider how this should be integrated into the community wealth building statements. Amendment 123 gives the Scottish Ministers the opportunity to include community share and bond models as a way of allowing community benefit societies or cooperatives to issue shares in fundraising assets. So this creates the option for more democratic and inclusive business models, allowing for greater diversification of Scotland's community wealth.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite Lorna Slater to speak to Amendment 23 and other amendments in the group. Lorna Slater.
Thank you, Convener. Amendment 23 brings in the consideration of just transition principles to the bill. Amendment 34 is again a proposal to integrate the 5 pillars into the bill in a slightly different way than the previous amendments 30 and 32 that I suggested, by structuring the statement's objectives around the 5 community wealth building pillars and connecting it to the National Performance Framework outcomes. Then the bill can hardwire the community wealth building into Scotland's broader economic, social and environmental architecture. On Amendment 5 from Murdo Fraser, both myself and the member have proposed amendments which include businesses to varying degrees. So I think we all spotted the same gap. I think maybe the ministers proposed some as well. I prefer my approach, though, so I won't be supporting Murdo Fraser on this occasion. On Amendment 53 with Richard Leonard, again, I think this is too frequent reporting, not a good use of resources. And on 123 from Paul Sweeney, it's just a bit awkwardly worded and specific. But again, I think Paul Sweeney's on the right track, but maybe to reconsider the wording before stage 3.
Thank you very much. And now I'd like to invite Murdo Fraser to speak to Amendment 5 and other amendments in the group. Murdo Fraser.
Thank you, Convener. I'm delighted Lorna Slater and I are in the same space on this at least. My Amendment 5 states that in preparing the Community Wealth Building Statement, Ministers are required to consult with businesses who might be affected by that. I have, in line with my earlier comments, I've taken a very modest approach to amendments on this bill. I've only put forward 4. Later, we'll come to a similar amendment I'm proposing for the preparation of community wealth building plans, where there will be a requirement to consult with businesses. So in order to be consistent, I wanted to put in this amendment to say that ministers, when preparing the draft statement, will also consult with businesses, given they are likely to be impacted by what is in that statement from Scottish ministers. So happy to move at the appropriate point Amendment 5.
Thank you very much. And now I'd like to invite Richard Leonard to speak to Amendment 52 and other amendments in the group. Richard Leonard.
Thank you, Convener. This Amendment 52 simply seeks to insert into the legislation Cooperative Development Scotland, which was established in 2006. It has, in my view, been cut to the bone. It's been allowed to wither on the vine. It's woefully under-resourced, although I haven't had a chance to look at yesterday's budget announcement. But the long-term position of it is that it's been allowed to become marginalised. And I think somebody said to me there is one part-time member of staff working on employee ownership and one member of staff working on cooperative development. For the Cooperative Development Agency for Scotland, that is a clear indication of massive under-resourcing. It does still appear on the Enterprise Agency's website as the arm of the Enterprise Agencies for Cooperative Development. It's still on the Scottish Enterprise website, advertising one-to-one sessions with specialist advisor for those interested in converting to cooperative and employee ownership. And for that reason, I think it should be explicitly included on the face of this bill. My second amendment in this group, Amendment 53, again is to visit the suggestion from the government that we only review statements and plans once every 5 years. Now, I'm quite interested in 5-year plans when it comes to economic development, but I reflect on the fact that an interval of 5 years could mean that within a session of Parliament, there is not a statement being made. So I am concerned that, listening to what Lorna Slater said, perhaps she thinks my kind of Chartist instincts of an annual return to these things is too frequent. But I put to her and to others that perhaps take that view. Every 5 years is far too big an interval. And for that reason, I've put on the agenda of the committee to consider a statement being produced every year. Thanks, Convener.
Mr Leonard. No other members have indicated they wish to speak. And I'd like to invite the Minister to respond on behalf of the Government. Minister.
Thank you, Convener. The Government position is to resist all amendments in this group except for 23 and 34 in Lorna Slater's name. As regards Amendment 23, as Ministers are already obliged to have regard to the Just Transition Principle set out in Section 35C of the Climate Change Scotland Act 2009, this amendment is not essential. However, to strengthen this obligation in an economic policy context, we are on balance able to support it. With regards to Amendment 122, the Economic Democracy Group is already looking at all recommendations made in the independent report developing Scotland's economy, increasing the role of inclusive and democratic business models. So I see no need for the amendment as the work of that group can feed into the first community wealth building statement. And with regard to the earlier comments from Richard Leonard about the group not meeting, my understanding is that the group has met last year. It is falls under the portfolio of the Business Minister, and it's chaired by senior officials. But my officials are very happy to engage with Mr Leonard to advise him of the status of the group. On Amendment 123 regarding community share and bond models, I think this is at a level of detail best suited for the guidance. The bill is intended to provide a framework for preparation of a statement and action plans, and it's not intended to prescribe consideration of specific financial mechanisms. With regard to amendment, yeah.
I totally take that point, but would the Minister commit, even if he's not supporting this change to the legislation, would the Minister commit to actually looking at these economic models so that they're not left behind and missed out?
Yeah, happy to consider those and look at those, indeed. The member on that. With regards to Amendment 34, I can see this is a similar vein to number 5 in Murdo Fraser's name, except in this case Lorna Slater's amendment focuses on consulting with local authorities, community organisations and social enterprises, and the Government's position is to support Amendment 34. On Amendment 35, I think it's critical that businesses are consulted on any draft community wealth building statement, and any responsible government would, of course, talk to business in this context. And the bill already provides that ministers must consult such persons as they consider appropriate. I'm also concerned that the way the amendment is worded, it may require ministers to consult each and every business that is potentially affected, which would not be practicable. I would, however, be happy to discuss this matter with the member party stage 3, perhaps building on the content of Amendment 34 to arrive at a more comprehensive and workable coverage of key consultees. Amendment 52 is in a similar vein. Again, I think a specific obligation to consult with Community Development Scotland, when preparing the Community Wealth Building Statement, is not required, as Cooperative Development Scotland forms part of Scottish Enterprise, who with many other bodies and partners will be consulted on a draft statement. I think that a future administration should be allowed to choose how to conduct an inclusive consultation exercise. However, as I say, I'm happy to discuss this matter with colleagues before Stage 3. Finally, in this group, the Government position is not to support Amendment 53. Moving from a 5-year cycle of revision of the statement to 1 year does not allow enough time for progress to be monitored and new measures to be formulated. It would mean that the Government would be trapped in a perpetual cycle of continually revising the statement, and should 5 years prove too long, ministers are obliged to keep the statement under review and can revise it at any point. I would urge members not to move, and if to move, not to support the amendments in this group. Amendments 23 and 34 accepted. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much, Minister. I'd now like to ask Paul Sweeney to wind up and to press or withdraw Amendment 122. Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Convener. Open to further discussion with the Minister on these matters, but I don't think it's particularly onerous on the Government to have to cross-reference how a report that it commissioned interfaces with this bill. It's a relatively minor piece of work, but it demonstrates confidence that there is coherence in the Government's approach to this. So I don't think there's any real issues with Amendment 122. And also 123, given the context of the slow decline of Cooperative Development Scotland and the enterprise agencies has been reported, I think it's really important that this is explicitly put on the face of the bill that community benefit societies and cooperatives should be developed in a clear practical way. Would be the issuing of equity and share capital to allow them to fundraise for community ownership. I think it's a really useful exercise, and it's one that certainly the Government should be thinking about how it mandates Corporate Development Scotland, which has been on a downward trajectory in the last few years, and how it rejuvenates that organisation within Scottish Enterprise. So I think this is a useful test to see where the Government is going to take CDS in the future. With that in mind, I'm minded to press these amendments at this stage.
Thank you, Mr Sweeney. The question is that Amendment 122 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We're not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 122 to raise their hands now? Thank you. Those members against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 3 members in favour, 6 against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 122 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 123 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated with 122. Paul Sweeney, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 123 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not agreed, therefore we will divide. Can I ask those members in favour of 123 to raise their hands now? Thank you. Those members against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 123 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 23 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 122. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 23 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 23 to raise their hands now? Those against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any amendments? Sorry, abstentions. As, yeah. There were 7 members in favour, 2 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 123 has been agreed to. Sorry, Amendment 23. Correction, Amendment 23 has been agreed to. I now call Amendment 5 in the name of Murdo Fraser, already debated with Amendment 122. Murdo Fraser, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 5 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
We are not agreed. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 5 to raise their hands now? Thank you. Those members against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any amendments?
Amendments?
So abstentions. I think I need to write that at the top of my page. Yeah, actually, I'll just read this result out first. There were 4 members for, 5 members against, and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 5 has not been agreed to. Just on that note, my intention is to carry on until we reach the next grouping and then take a short suspension just to provide a bit of relief and maybe help me with my diction. I now I call Amendment 52 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 122. Richard Leonard, to move or not move?
Move, Convener.
The question is that Amendment 52 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 52 to raise their hands now? Thank you. Those against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 52 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 34 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 122. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Not move. Sorry, move. Sorry, Convener. My brain's elsewhere. Move. I could also
I know the feeling. Amendment 34 has been moved, so therefore the question is that Amendment 34 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not agreed. We will divide. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 34 to raise their hands now? Thank you. Those members against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? Therefore, there were 7 members in favour, 2 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 34 has been agreed to. I now call Amendment 81 in the name of the Minister, already debated with Amendment 46. I ask the Minister to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 81 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. The question is that Section 1 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. I now propose that we suspend for 10 minutes. So if we could reconvene at 5 minutes past 12 sharp. Thank you. We now move on to the next grouping. So I call Amendment 6 in the name of Lorna Slater, group with Amendments 124 and 102. Lorna Slater to move Amendment 6 and speak all amendments in the group. Lorna Slater.
Thank you, Convener. One of my concerns is that the Community Wealth Building Statement doesn't just become something that the Scottish Government can publish and ignore. So Amendment 6 attempts to compel ministers to take action in line with their statement. This form of words is based on that in the Circular Economy Bill, so I believe it's a sound approach. I would like to understand from the Minister what their preferred approach is to ensure that this statement is more than just a bit of paper on the shelf, how it will connect with policy and other legislation in an integrated way if this isn't the approach he prefers. Paul Sweeney's amendments in this group are highlighting the same point, so I do think that this is something that the government is going to need to address, if not at stage 2, then at stage 3, and I move the amendment in my name.
Thank you. Paul Sweeney to speak to Amendment 124 and other amendments in the group. Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Convener. As Lawrence Slater alluded to, the purpose of these amendments are similar. Amendment 124 removes the possibility of the Community Wealth Building Statement having actions that are not acted upon, but instead requires Scottish ministers to implement those measures agreed in the statement. It is key that action and not just the duplication of paperwork is the ultimate outcome of the Community Wealth Building Bill. Amendment 102 seeks to ensure that community wealth building action plans are binding, enabling meaningful and progressive action towards outcomes. If the phrase "so far as reasonably practicable" is kept on the face of the bill, then relevant public bodies have an enormous loophole to avoid following through on action plans. The ability of the community wealth building partners to deliver the action plan will be assessed and dealt with during a review or monitoring, rather than providing a general loophole on the face of the bill. I hope this can be closed at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. No other member has indicated they wish to speak, so I'd like to invite the Minister to respond on behalf of the Government. Minister.
Thank you, Convener. The Government position is not to support any of the amendments in this group. Amendment 6 in the name of Lorna Slater would impose a legal obligation on the Scottish Government to consider the contents and relevance of their published Community Wealth Building Statement when making any other government policy, including proposals for legislation. Seeking productive synergy between linked government policies should be a staple for any administration, and I don't think we need primary legislation to obligate such activity, and we should also bear in mind the principle of parliamentary accountability where the reporting requirement lies. Amendment 124 from Paul Sweeney would impose a legal obligation on ministers to implement their Community Wealth Building Statement. The statement is a list of measures that the Scottish ministers are taking or intending to take, so I see no necessity to compel Scottish ministers to be legally obliged to implement the measures. They will also rightly be scrutinised by Parliament through the mechanisms of laying the statement and the reports on progress before it. Amendment 102 from Paul Sweeney would amend Section 8 of the bill to remove the words "so far as reasonably practicable" from the provision, requiring the community wealth building partners so far as reasonably practicable to implement the measures set out in their action plan. This would obligate local authorities and the relevant public bodies to implement actions as set out in the plan, even if they prove to be impractical or impossible to deliver for any reason. My concern is that this will reduce flexibility and may actually inhibit the ambition of community wealth building partnerships. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much, Minister. I now ask Lorna Slater to wind up and to press or withdraw Amendment 6.
No further remarks, Convener, and I will press Amendment 6.
Thank you. With that, the question, therefore, is that Amendment 6 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not agreed, therefore we will divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 6 to raise their hands now? All those against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any members wishing to abstain? I've got some abstentions. I'm glad I've been asking questions.
It's just for you.
There were 3 members in favour, 4 members against and 2 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 6 has not been agreed to. We now move to the next grouping. I call Amendment 7 in the name of Lorna Slater, grouped with Amendments 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 and 19. I invite Lorna Slater to move Amendment 7 to speak to all amendments in the group. Lorna Slater.
Too often when public bodies publish data, they do so in a format that doesn't lend itself to analysis, such as scanned hard copies or PDFs. All of these amendments seek to ensure that all data must be published in suitable formats for analysis. And there's two different types of amendments in this group. One explicitly calls out a standardised machine-readable format, and the other gives the Scottish ministers the option to, by regulations, specify the format of data to be published in. So there's two slightly different approaches here, but both are intended to ensure that proper analysis can be undertaken in a straightforward way of any data that is produced. And I move Amendment 7 in my name.
Thank you. No other member has indicated they wish to speak. I'd now like to invite the Minister to respond on behalf of the Government. Minister.
Thank you, Convener. This group of amendments regarding standardised machine-readable formats for the various statements and reports, while understandable in their intention of promoting accessibility, are not necessary. Scottish ministers and indeed local authorities are already required to make their documents and websites accessible via other legislation. Now, it's not just a question of being unnecessary. I think there's a further dimension here around the risk of primary legislation becoming dated as a result of these amendments. Technology evolves at such a pace that I would be concerned multiple future amendments would be required to keep pace with it. We should indeed... Yeah.
Thank you, Minister. The Amendment 8 and the other ones that are similar to it specifically say that Scottish ministers may, by regulation, specify further details of the format and therefore are not specifying on the face of the bill what the format should be, but allowing ministers to adjust that as we go forward. Is that not acceptable?
I take that point, but I think the earlier point still stands, which is that this requirement is already laid down in other legislation, which means that there isn't a need for it here, and on the principle of not adding in extra items into this bill that are already covered elsewhere, I would still urge members to vote against these amendments. I would be happy to instruct my officials to include the topic of accessibility and format standardisation in the guidance development discussions. That will include representations from the relevant bodies and other organisations, including COSLA, public bodies and the third and business sectors. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Minister. I'd like to invite Lorna Slater to wind up and to press or withdraw Amendment 7. Lorna Slater.
No further remarks, Convener, but I will withdraw Amendment 7.
Are members content that Amendment 7 be withdrawn? I therefore call... Amendment 7 is therefore withdrawn. I'd now like to call Amendment 8 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 7.
I will move Amendment 8.
So the question is therefore that Amendment 8 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore we will divide. Can I ask all those members in favour of Amendment 8 to raise their hands now? Thank you. All those members against, please raise their hands now. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 5 members in favour, 4 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 8 has been agreed to. The question is that, that Section 2 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. I now call Amendment 124 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated with Amendment 6. Paul Sweeney, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 124 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore we will divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 124 to raise their hands now? Can I ask members who are against to please raise their hands? Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 4 members in favour, 5 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 124 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 53 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 122. Richard Leonard, to move or not move?
Move, Convener.
The question is that Amendment 53 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 53 to raise their hands now? Thank you. Those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 53 has not been agreed to. The question is the question is that Section 3 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. And I call Amendment 35 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 33. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Not to move.
Amendment 35 has been withdrawn. And I call Amendment 54 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 33. Richard Leonard, to move or not move?
Move.
The question, therefore, is that Amendment 54 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed. Can I ask members who are in favour of Amendment 54 to raise their hands now? Thank you. All those members against Amendment 54, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 2 members in favour. 7 against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 54 has not been agreed to. I call Amendment 82 in the name of Sarah Boyack, already debated with Amendment 33. Sarah Boyack, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 82 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes. Yes.
We are agreed. I now call Amendment 83 in the name of Sarah Boyack, already debated with Amendment 33. Sarah Boyack, to move or not moved?
Moved.
The question, therefore, is that Amendment 83 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
No. Yes.
We are not agreed. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 83 to raise their hands now? Thank you. All those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 2 members in favour, 7 against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 83 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 9 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 7. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Not move.
Amendment 9 has been withdrawn. I now call Amendment 10 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 7. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 10 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask those in favour of Amendment 10 to raise their hands now? Thank you. All those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 5 members in favour, 4 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 10 has been agreed to. I now call Amendment 55 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 33. Richard Leonard, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 55 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed, therefore we'll divide. Can I ask those in favour of Amendment 55 to raise their hands now? Thank you. Those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 2 votes in favour, 7 against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 55 has not been agreed to. Amendment 55 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 56 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 33. Richard Leonard, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 56 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not agreed. Therefore, we'll divide. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 56 to raise their hands now? Thank you. All those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 2 members in favour, 7 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 56 has not been agreed to. The question is that Section 4 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We now move to the next grouping. I call Amendment 84 in the name of the Minister, a group with amendments as shown in the groupings. Minister to move Amendment 84 and to speak to all amendments in the group. Minister.
Thank you, Convener. I would encourage members to support all 4 amendments in my name in this group, as well as Amendment 128 in the name of Lorna Slater. On Amendment 84, it represents a small adjustment to make it clear local authorities and the relevant partners must develop a community wealth building action plan together, as opposed to producing one each. The latter unintended interpretation had been highlighted during Stage 1. Amendments 92 and 93 are linked. Amendment 92 seeks to ensure inclusive development of local action plans by adding specific requirements to consult representatives of the community, business and third sector. And Amendment 93 ensures that local authorities are transparent about how they consulted during the preparation period and how they factored in views received in framing the final document. Amendment 100 in my name represents an adjustment to the bill to ensure there is clarity regarding the local authority's role in publishing a revised action plan, and Section 5.2 already makes it clear that responsibility falls to the local authority. However, the wording of Section 7.3 needs to be tightened to make clear that, as regards revised action plans too. The government position is to resist the rest of the amendments in this group except 128. While existing statutory provisions set how common good assets can be used, I do not think that introducing additional measures via this bill would impact negatively on existing provisions, and therefore the government's position is to support Amendment 128. In relation to Amendment 18, I agree with the importance of consulting with businesses on community wealth building action plans. However, I would invite the member to speak to me about this prior to Stage 3. By obliging local authorities to consult all businesses operating in the relevant local area, I'm concerned that this goes too far and represents a significant task. As I say, I'd be happy to discuss this further in the hope of finding a more workable solution for consulting businesses. In addition, I think it's worth highlighting again Amendment 92 in my name, which would require consulting persons considered representatives of, amongst other things, businesses. Should Murdo Fraser find its term satisfactory, perhaps he can consider withdrawing his amendment. On Amendments 125 and 129 in Paul Sweeney's name, the Government cannot support the first of these as it places too high a level of focus on one potential collaborative partner for community wealth building partnerships, namely credit unions. Credit unions are important bodies in a community wealth building context, but not to the extent that they should be isolated and elevated above others in the way Amendment 125 proposes. Amendment 129 regarding a specific obligation on local authorities to consult credit unions cannot be supported by the Government on the same grounds. And Richard Lerner's Amendment 61 is similar to number 125 in its selective focus, this time on Cooperative Development Scotland, which is part of Scottish Enterprise, a public body who will be obliged to be part of the development of every community wealth building action plan. Therefore, there is no requirement for this amendment, and I would urge the member to withdraw it. Sarah Boyack's Amendment 91 reminds me of the huge importance of working with communities to maximise the impact of community wealth building as a policy and model of local economic development. However, an obligation to consult with any community bodies operating in the relevant area when preparing an action plan, in other words, all of them, seems quite onerous in practice. Again, I would respectfully ask the member to withdraw this amendment and consider supporting my Amendment 92 instead, which would require consultation with such persons as the Community Wealth Building Partnership considers representatives of the interests of the community. In relation to Lorna Slater's Amendment 38, adding additional entities that must be consulted by local authorities when preparing an action plan, again, I would encourage the member to withdraw this amendment and support my Amendment 92. I think that combination of the proposed consultation requirements as amended by my proposed amendments and statutory guidance can address the issue of adequate consultation. Finally, as regards Amendment 65 from Richard Leonard, the Government cannot support imposing a requirement to update action plans every year. It is too frequent in my view. Further, this would need to be discussed with COSLA and others prior to committing community wealth building partners to an annual timescale for revising action plans. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Minister. I'd now like to invite Paul Sweeney to speak to Amendment 125 and other amendments in the group. Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Convener. And these are intentionally designed to reinforce the role of credit unions within community wealth building in Scotland. 125, 129 serve the same purpose. I think the Minister was rather perhaps dismissive of the role of credit unions and their unique position within the Scottish economy. We know that Scotland has an extremely concentrated banking system. The clearing banks dominate our banking system, but credit unions in Scotland actually demonstrate relatively remarkable reach relative to other parts of the UK, serving almost 500,000 members in Scotland with £750 million in loans. So it's a huge opportunity with 9% population penetration to build on that unique asset that Scotland has. And I think just to dismiss it or not to elevate that exceptional situation or recognise that exceptional situation is rather unfair. I'd hope the Minister would perhaps reconsider his position on that, and perhaps we can look again at it if he's not minded to support at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd now invite Lorna Slater to speak to Amendment 128 and other amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. Amendment 128 is to ensure that local authorities consider the use and disposal of common land and assets when developing their action plans. As other members, including Rhoda Grant, have highlighted, common land and assets will be significant assets when developing these. Amendment 38 in particular, I'd like members to consider because the intention here is to ensure that local democratic organisations such as community councils and development trusts, as well as organisations already working on community wealth building in the area and key private companies such as major local employers are included. This was a key concern flagged by stakeholders and at committee, that existing organisations like community development trusts who are already working in community wealth building and have substantial local knowledge and experience can, according to stage 1 of this bill, be completely excluded from the development of the action plan. It was a specific ask of the development trusts that we heard from that they be included, and it seems counterproductive to ignore the experience and expertise that they have to bring to this process. It also seems sensible to include private firms who are substantial local employers or landowners. Murdo Fraser's Amendment 18 is attempting something similar, I think. I think Sarah Boyack is looking to do something similar to my Amendment 38 with Amendment 91, but I think her wording is too broad and that democratic community groups, as described in mine, which does include community councils, is more specific and more representative. I don't disagree with the intentions of 125 or 129 from Paul Sweeney. They are just both in slightly odd places in the bill and maybe could be reconsidered at stage 3. As previously with the annual reporting requirements in Amendment 65, I think that is too onerous in this case and I won't be supporting that amendment. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Murdo Fraser to speak to Amendment 18 and other amendments in the group. Murdo Fraser.
Thank you, Convener. My Amendment 18 requires those preparing community wealth building plans to consult with businesses operating in the area, particularly those who will be likely to be impacted by any targets, which we'll come to in a later group. I listened with interest to what the Minister had to say in which this, and I've looked at the wording of his Amendment 92, which we will support. The wording of Amendment 92 includes consultation with such persons as are considered representative of the interests of businesses, which is a slightly different point to the one that making in Amendment 18. So I'll be happy to support Amendment 92. I won't move Amendment 18 at this stage, but I will be interested in having discussions with the Minister prior to stage 3 to see if there's some other wording that might be something we could agree upon.
Thank you, Mr Fraser. Richard Leonard to speak to Amendment 61 and other amendments of the group.
Thank you, Convener. Amendment 61 is again an attempt to include Cooperative Development Scotland as part of the preparation of the Community Building Action Plan at a local level. I am concerned that its history, as well as its present and its future, appears to have been written off, and I think it's an important part of the tools of economic development in Scotland. If it sits inside Scottish Enterprise, and I understand the Minister's argument that Scottish Enterprise are consulted, ergo Cooperative Development Scotland are consulted, I would be looking for something a little bit firmer than that to guarantee that that will be a dimension of the input that Scottish Enterprise and the Enterprise Network generally makes. Amendment 65 is about having the local plan revised annually. Frankly, if the committee is not prepared to support the Scottish Government coming back to Parliament more than once every 5 years, I think it would be rather unfair to impose an annual regime on local government. So I will not press that amendment at this morning's meeting.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Sarah Boyack to speak to Amendment 91 and other amendments in the group. Sarah Boyack.
Thank you, Convener. My Amendment 91 simply strengthens the consultation requirements around the preparation of a Community Wealth Building Action Plan, because as drafted, the bill sets out a list of bodies a local authority must consult. But my amendment adds a clear requirement to include any community bodies operating in the area covered by the plan, so that there's no risk of any community groups being ignored. And this is really important because community wealth building is meant to be rooted in local priorities and local experience. Community bodies are often the organisations with the closest understanding of local needs, assets and opportunities. Ensuring they are explicitly included in the consultation process helps make the action plan more grounded, more representative and ultimately more effective. And the other amendments in this group about transparency, inclusive, joint working with local authorities, credit unions, development trusts and businesses, these are all important. I think I just want to finish by commenting on Richard Leonard's comments about Community Development Scotland. It's really important that they're still on our profile and are not just subsumed by Scottish enterprise. If we're going to make community cooperatives actually work, then they need to be higher up the agenda. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much. No other members have indicated they'd like to speak in this grouping, so I'd like to invite the Minister to wind up.
Yeah, just a few brief comments, Convener. I hear the points that Paul Sweeney makes in regard to credit unions, and it's not to obviously downplay the critical importance of credit unions. The reflection is more on how they would be other types of bodies that could or should be considered in the same vein in how we articulate in the legislation. But having said that, I'm very happy to meet with them and engage on that particular point in advance of stage 3 to talk through the government's position. I thank Murdo Fraser for withdrawing his amendment and look forward to engagement with him on that specific point concerning businesses. And on Sarah Boyack's point on community bodies, I think there are real concerns there about how you define a community body, how do you find out how many there are in any given area, and in any given area there could be many hundreds of them, and what happens if you miss one? So I think it's an impractical, well I get the intent of it, it's an impractical approach to address that particular issue. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much, Minister. The question, therefore, is that Amendment 84 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. I now call Amendment 125 in the name of Paul Sweeney, already debated with Amendment 84. Paul Sweeney, to move or not move?
To move, Convener.
The question is that Amendment 125 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed. Can I ask, therefore we will divide. Can I ask all members in favour of Amendment 125 to raise their hands now? Can I ask all members against to please raise their hands? Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 2 members in favour, 7 members against, 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 125 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 11 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 7. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Not move.
Amendment 11 has been withdrawn. I now call Amendment 12 in the name of Lorna Slater, already debated with Amendment 7. Lorna Slater, to move or not move?
Move.
Amendment 12 has been moved. The question, therefore, is that Amendment 12 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. We are not agreed. We will therefore divide. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 12 to raise their hands now? Thank you. All those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 5 members in favour, 4 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 12 has been agreed to. I now call Amendment 58 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 46. Richard Leonard, to move or not move?
Moved, Convener.
The question is that Amendment 58 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are not agreed. We will therefore divide. Can I ask members in favour of Amendment 58 to raise their hands now? Thank you. All those against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 58 has not been agreed to. I now call Amendment 59 in the name of Richard Leonard, already debated with Amendment 46. Richard Leonard, to move or not move?
Convener.
The question, therefore, is that Amendment 59 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
We are not agreed, therefore we will divide. Can I ask those members in favour of Amendment 59 to raise their hands now? Thank you. All those members against, please raise their hands. Thank you. And any abstentions? There were 3 members in favour, 6 members against and 0 abstentions. Therefore, Amendment 59 has not been agreed to. I think with that, and given the progress that we've made, we're going to, I think, draw this morning's contemplation at stage 2 of the Community Wealth Building Act to a close and move into private session, and we will resume next week. Thank you very much.